Good morning and welcome to Veronica Live. And I'm here with statesman John Salek, and we have a huge lineup this morning, John.
Good morning from Northcom, or FarmCom, I guess it is, up here in Georgia.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm glad you're up in Georgia. Florida, it's drizzly and gray and not pretty today. But we've got a huge lineup. Peter Feaman, our Florida National Committeeman, is going to join us. He just was in Las Vegas last month at the RNC. They had a gathering there, and then we're going to talk with him too because Florida had their RPOF meeting and voted in the next National Committee man. So we've got a lot to talk to him about. And of course, we love to have new candidates that are running for office. We've got Jared Lovelace is going to join us. He's running for the District 10 seat in Texas. And he's a former Army, I think, Ranger. So we'll have him on. That's going to be great. And we've got a guest returning here, Russ Koesterich. How do I say his name, John? You know, I always butcher everybody's names. Koesterich, and he's a BlackRock's portfolio manager of the BlackRock Global Allocation Fund. So he oversees $50 billion, and
Wow.
That's a lot of money, John.
Yeah, I wish I had that. Attend to that.
Right? And well, we'll talk with him about the job market. He's a job expert, the economy, inflation, just all of that stuff, because it's so hard right now to get ahead as an American. And, and we can't talk politics with him, but we'll get into, do elections impact your bank account? And I think they do. So we'll chat with him, and then we'll be joined by Linda Cope. She is the founder of the Warrior Beach Retreat, and I'll be joining them this week because Colonel Alan West is our guest speaker, and I helped set that up. And so we'll just get in quickly to talk about her mission, and everybody's invited too. So that's Thursday evening here in Panama City. But a big show today, John, and we have lots of politics.
Oh my goodness, what a week. I mean, I was putting together the show notes and it was like, where do you even start? There's so many storylines going on. It's just amazing that the world is in turmoil, I guess.
Well, turmoil, and there's so much we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk about how I got my premium Twitter account now, and I have lots of traction, and it cost me $22 to get that traction, John.
So you're verified now, is that right?
I am verified premium plus, and so you have to give your driver's license, and then it's they verified me, but it says it took a couple days to get my check mark, and it finally arrived, and I thought it was Christmas morning. And I keep looking because now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to be witty. I've got to get out there and troll like famous people and get on their websites. And so now I'm like a Twitter X addict over here. And what's really cool is, now that I've paid all of this money, because I told my husband that was the Valentine gift that I was going to give myself, the analytics is insane. Oh my gosh. I've only posted, I think, 4 tweets, and I've had almost 7,000 impressions. I've got 10 new followers, and it's just been going crazy. And so many likes, it's insane. And I'll have to read you some of my funny Twitter tweet. I don't even know what they're called these days. But when we come back, we're going to be joined by Peter Feaman, our Florida National Committeeman, and he's going to have so much to tell us this morning. So we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we're here with our first guest of the morning, and you know him. He's a show regular. Our Florida National Committeeman, Peter Feaman, is back to join us and talk politics this morning. Welcome back, Peter.
Good morning, Veronica, and good morning, fellow Patriots.
Well, we have a lot to talk about. I mean, this week is, every week in politics is absolute insanity. And I just loved following you on Facebook this week because you got into the Fani case over in Georgia and had some words to say about the Fani Willis. So please do tell our audience what a nightmare this trial has become.
Well, like I said, Fani is aptly named. Such that, and what is going on there is, in today's vernacular, a true S show. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And now what's going on in New York as well. It's like with these law cases, I don't even know where to begin. So let me tell you first, I have been a trial attorney for 45 years. I have been in courtrooms my entire life. I have tried hundreds of non-jury trials, dozens of jury trials, and what is going on in both Georgia and New York is an absolute disgrace. I mean, you want to talk about a threat to democracy. The threats to democracy are these Democrat prosecutors who have no respect for our Constitution, no respect for due process. And actually, you don't even have to be a lawyer to just look on from the outside and say, wait a minute, this can't be right. This can't be right, right? And so the first thing, let me talk about New York first. If that's
okay, please, because that was huge. That broke yesterday. That
yes.
Trump has to pay $335 million. Each of his sons, I think, were $4 million each, and then the CEO, the former CEO of his corporation, has to pay $1 million. And apparently, there's been all the banks came forward, and they're all happy. Everything's been paid, but now he's been slapped with all of this money that he has to pay.
And yet, goodness gracious. Well, let me say what my pastor says and then do this. Let's unpack this. He'd take a scripture verse. Then he'd say, okay, let's unpack this. So this is no scripture verse. This is an abomination. But let's unpack this abomination if we can. So the first thing is the prosecutor in New York. She literally campaigned on getting Trump. Now, then she gets elected, and then she finds this statute which doesn't apply to, quote, get Trump. The first thing that should have happened is she should have been disqualified. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a throat going on. She should have been disqualified because it shows right away from her campaign that she had no interest in justice. She had no interest in doing the right thing. She only had an interest in getting an individual. That should disqualify you right there as a prosecutor. So that's step number one. That's wrong. Step number two, in any civil case to bring a lawsuit, and I brought a few in my day, like that Farmers Insurance commercial. I've seen a thing or two in a court of law. There's two parts to every case. Number one, liability. Number two, damages. And you have to have both. So somebody can be careless and reckless and bang into your car driving 100 miles an hour. But if by some miracle there's no damage to you or the car, there's no lawsuit. No matter how reckless you are, because you have to have the two components. You have to have liability. Liability means you did something wrong. You were careless. You were reckless. You were wrong in some action. But it doesn't matter if you didn't hurt anybody. There's no damages. Without damages, you have no case. So in this case, there's no damages. Nobody got hurt, like you said earlier, Veronica. The bankers came in and testified and said, paid back every dime you borrowed. Didn't matter whether he said Mar-a-Lago was worth $11 million or $110 million. He paid everything back timely. And so there's no problem here. That's why another reason why the case should have been thrown out. There's no damages. Number three, he got sued under a consumer protection statute, which means that consumers have been wrong because some guy came to your house and sold you oil that was going to keep you alive for 1 million years, and of course you died the next day after you bought his oil. So the state steps in. The state then has the right to step in and say, I'm going to sue on behalf of all of these victims who bought that snake oil, and we're going to represent them, and then we're going to sue, and we're going to recover money on their behalf, and then we'll give that money to those victims. Okay, so here the judge says, yeah, you got to pay that money. Who are the victims? Who are you going to pay that money to? Well, he ordered that it gets paid to the state. Well, the state's not a victim here. The state was never damaged. You don't get to sue somebody on behalf of people who don't exist and then keep the money. This is an example of fascism. The state is suing you to collect money in compensation for what? For nothing. This is absolute, unadulterated fascism. They just want a political opponent silenced. So they sue him out of whole cloth. Nothing. There's nothing. So that's number 3. Let's go to number 4 to show how these fascist prosecutors are wrong. Number 4, in the Constitution, before somebody takes your money, you have a right to a trial by jury of your peers. There's no jury trial here. It's just a fascist judge and a fascist prosecutor colluding to destroy one individual who's a political opponent. Number 5, remember what number I'm on now. Number 5, and I'm just saying this to the appellate judge because I've done plenty of appeals in my day too. I'd say number 5, Your Honors, because there's a 3-judge appellate panel in most cases, right? So number 5, Your Honors, is a thing called due process. This judge granted summary judgment on the liability phase of case, meaning there was no trial on whether he had done something wrong. There's only a trial on how much he would pay as a result of having done something wrong. So wait a minute. You get to have a trial to find out first if you've done anything wrong. This is just a damages trial. He skipped right over the liability part and said, okay, I've decided without a trial, you're guilty. Now, let's talk about how much money you should pay. This whole thing is absolutely crazy. And if this doesn't convince every independent voter in the United States to vote for this poor man, nothing will, because this guy deserves our support. And believe me, I am not someone who started out in 2015 as a Trump supporter. But now here we are in 2024, and I see what they're doing to this man. And every American should look at this man and say, we need to support this victim of this fascism that's going on. And that's my legal opinion on the whole thing. And my personal opinion.
You know, it's Letitia James, and she came out after and said, oh, the art of the deal, he's, perfected the art of the steal. Don't you feel, Peter, that this has just been about headlines because they constantly want him in the headlines? And, of course, yesterday that they save it for a Friday afternoon to just go everywhere.
Right. And, yeah, that's despicable. That it's like she wants all the attention for herself, so she comes up with a cutesy line, the art of the steal. What did he steal?
I don't know.
So Peter, what's going on with our legal system? I mean, it seems like we're now divided the legal system, which is supposedly justice is blind, and we seem to have a Democrat legal system and a Republican legal system, and it just depends on where you're being charged. If you're being charged in New York, Washington, D.C., or a big city like Atlanta, and you're a Republican, you're toast. Just political fact,
And when would he have to pay that $400 million? Is it right away, or you just appeal and then? So when does he have to pay that?
Normally, what you have to do is you have to post a bond, and the bond means you find a bonding company and you pledge it's like a bail bond kind of thing. So that you don't have to pay the whole thing. You pledge assets to a bonding company, and then you pay a percentage of money to the bonding company, and the bonding company puts up the money in the registry of the court. So it's like buying an insurance policy. You pay 10% on what's due.
Okay.
And then you mortgage your assets.
Got
kind of thing in the event that this ever happens. Does that make sense?
That makes pure sense. Then back to John's question about the Democrats versus Republican, depending on what city you land in.
It's the two-tiered justice system is what everybody's talking about. And that is the end of democracy. That's the end of the republic. That's the end of a free society. When you can't count on the, quote, justice system. And, one of the 7 virtues in Catholicism is justice. And when you don't have justice, then evil reigns. And that's what we have right now. And that signals to me more than anything, and maybe because I've been a lawyer for 45 years, I'm more sensitive to it. That signals to me the danger that we're coming to possibly the end of a free society.
I feel that way.
And that's how serious. That's how serious this is. We all know that societies, democratic republics, historically, generally don't last, or constitutional republics don't last for more than a couple hundred years. And it's going to be up to the people right now in 2024 to rise up, as Trump said on January 6th, peacefully, but rise up on, that's another bogus prosecution of Mr. Trump, is that whole January 6th thing. And then, there's just so much going on. We have to stand on our rooftops, shout from the mountaintops and say, people, wake up. We're about to lose our free constitutional republic. Please get out there and vote for every possible freedom-loving person you can find. This is no longer a Republican-Democrat thing. This is a freedom versus fascism thing. And if you're not on the side of freedom, you're going to wake up one day and say, what happened? And you're going to have to explain to your children and your grandchildren, I'm sorry, I wish I had done more. But it's irrevocable. If we don't win in 2024, the people that love freedom, the people that love this country, we're done.
No, I agree. And I wanted to ask you, because you were with the RNC in Las Vegas, and Ronna McDaniel finally came out and said she's going to step away after the South Carolina vote in March. And it seems like I was on an space event with Matt Gaetz, and it was all about the RNC, how they're going to have to take a line of credit for $10 million. They don't have money. People aren't donating because of her. And then, of course, we lost the George Santos seat this week as well. Where are we with the RNC?
Very interesting. You should say that, because also just yesterday we got a notice from the RNC that they're calling a meeting in March. Let me tell you the exact date for that, Veronica and John. March 7th and 8th, we're going to have a meeting in Houston. And we'll get the agenda 10 days out. I suspect at that meeting there may be a vote to remove the chairman of the RNC.
And will you actually fly in there?
Yes.
Okay.
She may announce to avoid a vote and the embarrassment of her removal. The embarrassment of removal, goodness gracious. That brings us back to a party a little closer to home, Florida, but that's for another discussion. So she may then very well resign. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to predict she's going to resign on Friday, March 8th, 2024.
Good.
So Peter, what's going on with I've seen, was it Laura Trump has been mentioned as a possible co-chair. For people that understand, the RNC has a chairman and a co-chairman, or two co-chairmen, a man and a woman representative. And Sharon Day from Florida, our former National Committee woman, was co-chair with Rance Priebus previously. But what do you think of that? And who do you think the leading contenders would be to replace her?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a leading contender, if Trump was not going to get involved, would be the co-chair that we have right now, a guy named Drew McKissick. He's the chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, and he's very much respected and liked at the RNC, and he's our present co-chair. Without any recommendations from any outside sources, I think that would be the will of the RNC, 168 people that run the RNC, would be Drew McKissick. But with Mr. Trump stepping in, I think that Michael Whatley, the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, would probably get the nod. And then now that Laura Trump's name has been floated, my first reaction was, you know what, I'm not sure I like that. because it smacks of nepotism, and people don't like those kind of things in the United States. But then I had the opportunity to see her on a couple of talk shows on TV, and she's pretty good, and she's pretty articulate.
No, I would say, Peter, she's definitely been out there fighting for her father-in-law now for several years, because she's been a regular on Fox News forever. So, I mean, she's been strong. What about the George Santos seat now going to a Dem, and then the Republican woman they put forward wasn't a Trumper? You know, it's such a disaster. I can't believe we lost that seat. And again, you know, it was RNC, I feel like, didn't help with this.
Yeah, I don't know about the RNC's involvement, but I can tell you about her candidacy. Here's the problem. She equivocated. People are looking for somebody who stands for something clearly and forcefully. She equivocated about her support for Trump. She equivocated on immigration. She wasn't strong. People are desperately looking for somebody that's strong and not afraid to stand up for his or her beliefs. And so the base didn't come out because they don't want another rhino. People are looking for people that are going to stand for something clearly and strongly. And that's one of the reasons Ronald Reagan was so popular within our base and then brought the independents over, is because they may not have agreed with him on every issue, but they respected that he was not going to be a wishy-washy person. And people want right now moral clarity and true leadership. And if you don't offer that, then people are going to walk away. I think that's what happened. I don't think it was our message. I think it was our messenger in that case.
So the Florida Republican Party just had their annual meeting recently, and I guess they elected a new National Committeeman to you're retiring, right? And I guess Joe Gooders is...
Wait a minute, John. Whoa.
Maybe I missed that up.
The word retirement is an anathema to me.
Believe me, I understand that.
I got to look that word up, Peter.
Anathema, yeah. Okay. And so what I decided, John, not to run for a fourth term for a couple of reasons. 12 years as National Committeeman, I felt I did things well enough that it was time for somebody else, new leadership. I believe in term limits, and I like to be a man of what I say is what I believe, and what I believe is what I say. That's number one. Number two, I still believe that God has plans for me at some level to be an influencer for him in the political arena. And so I'm just waiting on God's call for my next adventure for his glory and his benefit, because we all know that we're in a battle. We're in a battle to save this republic founded and anointed by God himself. And the battle that we're in, John, is every much and every bit a spiritual battle as much as a political battle. And the spiritual warfare that we're in now is something I've never seen in my lifetime in the political arena. And the battle is being played out in the political arena between good and evil. So I'm still
you're still a warrior for God here. Yes, and Peter, that's one thing I've always loved about you, is you are so articulate in identifying what the real basis of this battle is, and it is good versus evil, and good and evil does exist, and I'm convinced that the Democrat Party needs to be destroyed. It is evil, and literally, I mean, needs to be destroyed. There is nothing redeeming about the Democrat Party as far as our country is concerned. I mean, the old Democrat Party from the 60s, that's not what we have now. What we have now are the communists, the fascists, That is the modern Democrat Party, and to me, its destruction is essential to the survival of our country.
Well, we have the Democrat Party from the 1860s, if you want to think about that. The original Democrat Party was the party of slavery. The original Democrat Party was the party of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yep.
The original Democrat Party was the party of Jim Crow. The original Democrat Party was the party of lynchings and mob rule. So I'd say here we are 160 years later, and the Democrat Party hasn't changed one bit. They just changed their who they're going after. They haven't changed one bit. You know, one thing, we had David Barton in Las Vegas who came and talked to us. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he talks about the godly heritage of our country. He's fantastic. And he showed where lynchings in the South were not just for black folks. The lynchings were Republicans as well. The Republicans were they were Republicans. 30% of the lynchings were based upon the fact that they were Republicans, not based upon the fact of their skin color. So I'd say, yeah, they sure are evil, John, and nothing's changed in 160 years.
Well, and Kamala's been on her little tour, and it's all about, killing babies. That's like her number one issue all the time. I follow her on Instagram, and I just want to throw up. It's, they are evil. But I wanted to come back to the border, Peter, because you posted about it. I mean, we're just out of control. Mayorkas was impeached this week. If we don't win in November, our country is definitely not going to be the country that we grew up in. And I've lived in a third world country, and I don't want to live in a third world country. It's not fun.
Yeah, you cannot import 10 million people who don't speak our language, okay, who have not been educated in the history and values of this great grand experiment in freedom called the United States. They have no appreciation for what it means to follow the law, come in legally, and then learn to love this country. We have good immigration in this country, and it's good because people follow the law. They come in, and on the day of their swearing-in ceremony, they love this country. When you bypass that process, you're letting people in who hate this country and are just here to take what they can get, not give back to the greatest country that's ever been. Excuse me. And so, yes, history shows that a country is based on four things that you must have in order to survive. Number one, a common culture. When you allow tens of millions of illegals into this country, you lose your common culture. Number two, you must have a common language. That obviously is not the case, allowing these millions of people in. Number three, you must have borders. Obviously, that's not the case. And you must have a common currency. Right now, we've lost 3 out of our 4, which means we're not a nation. We're not a nation anymore. We are a conglomeration of nothing. And yes, we will devolve into a third world country. I mean, just look at New York City, Chicago, and as you mentioned earlier, John, all of those blue cities. They're chaotic, and they're devolving into third world dystopia as well. So this is bad. And our last stand, our Alamo, if you will, is the 2024 election in November. And we can go the way of how those Patriots in Alamo went, or we can change the result of the Battle of Alamo and begin our climb back into sanity, our climb back into normalcy, our climb back, which is going to take more than one election, but our climb back into restoring what once was the greatest country that ever was in the history of Earth.
Well, Peter, it's always a pleasure having you on, and good luck in Houston in March. I want Rona gone, and so we'll have you back to hear what went down in Houston as we get our party back. And thank you for fighting the fight. And seriously, November it's critical for the world, because we need to be a world power leading and with God, as our wingman.
Thank you. Well, I want you to know I love the Panhandle. I'm speaking on Monday night in Santa Rosa County.
Oh, okay.
I'm speaking on March 1st. Hold on, let me look at my calendar. On March 1st, I'm speaking at the Okaloosa County Lincoln Day dinner. So every chance I get to come to the Panhandle, I accept the invitation, because I have a grandson who's a great high school baseball player, and the high school baseball season started this weekend.
All right. Well, those two counties are right next door, so we'll have to see you. But thanks for fighting the fight, Peter, and we'll have you back. And God bless you. Our Florida National Committeeman Peter Feaman, and we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we're here with our next guest, and he's a Patriot, obviously. His name is Jared Lovelace, and he is running to be your next congressman in the 10th District in Texas. Welcome, Jared, to Veronica Live.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And do tell us, why have you decided to run for this position?
Well, I was in the Army not too long ago, and I was watching the federal government seize power and step on individual rights during the COVID-19 pandemic, and watching spending just go up and up and up, the national debt going out of control. And the Army ran out of wars for me to fight, so I wanted to get out and come back to my home in Texas and start raising my voice at the community level. I did not know that I was going to run for Congress at this phase of my life. It was always something that I was interested in, but once I got back here to Texas and started talking to folks, I realized that there was a real need for change, and people were ready for some change. And I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and I ended up being the sole opponent to our 20-year incumbent congressman, Michael McCall, who's the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Wow, and that's a big fight you're in. But I forgot to ask you your background, because you were an Army officer, and tell us why you joined the Army and what you did in the Army. Because I'm a retired Air Force officer, and it's such a calling to serve our country as well in that capacity in the military.
Yeah, thank you for your service. I always, as a little kid, I always wanted to serve. It was, for some reason, just ingrained in my mind. I have some military heritage. My great-grandfather died in the Battle of the Bulge during World War II, and my grandfather served, and a couple of uncles served, and so that heritage was there, and that was something that resonated with me as a young boy. And so that was always the plan, really. The plan was always to serve in the military. And so I earned an ROTC scholarship, went to college, studied Arabic, because I felt like that's what the Army needed at the time. Didn't end up using it at all. I spent all my time in Alaska. I was an infantry officer. Yeah, there wasn't much need for it up there. But I was an infantry officer, so I led teams of riflemen from 42 soldiers up to 140 at different times, and we survived in the Arctic. We learned how to conduct combat operations in the Arctic, and it was a totally different ballgame than what I was anticipating.
Well, I'm glad, because Alaska is way too cold for me. So, but fast forward, now you're running against a 20-year incumbent. How's that been going? I do know, when I was researching you care about the border, and of course, our deficit is just out of control. So tell us how that race is going, and some of the issues that you are fighting for.
So the chiefest issue that is on people's minds here in District 10 is, the border obviously is on everybody's mind, but truly just having good representation, right? And that's what the conversation in this campaign has been largely about is your congressman present? Does he show up? Have you met him before? Have you seen his face at events and stuff? And, every county that I've gone to, I've gotten the same feedback. Oh yeah, we haven't seen him in a couple of years, or, he doesn't hold public town halls. He only does private ones with elected officials, and so
that sounds like our congressman.
There's some frustration for sure with just we put this guy in office for a long time, and he doesn't really seem to feel very accountable to us, the voters. When he comes back to visit, he visits the big donors, not the actual voters themselves, right? So that's definitely a part of it. But the campaign overall is going well, despite how massive this district is. It's a huge geographic area, stretches from the western edge of Houston to Austin, goes around Austin, covers the west side of Austin, and it goes north as well up to College Station and Madisonville. And so I have spent a lot of time in the car driving to each of the 13 counties, visiting town halls, candidate forums, and everywhere I've gone, I've been very, very well received. And so it's we've got a lot of great volunteers helping us out. It's the grassiest of grassroots campaigns. And quite frankly, I feel like that's how every campaign should be. Every campaign should be grassroots. The big money going into national media and television ads and just saturating the market with your name and your face so that people remember you when they show up to the ballot box and not necessarily align with you, right? But it's unfortunate how politics kind of works today. Elections more often than not are bought rather than earned, and so that we're trying to challenge that and prove that it can be done.
Yeah, well, Jay, this is co-host John Salek. I've seen something like this. Where we're at here in Florida, Congressional District 2 is the largest congressional district east of the Mississippi, and very similar. It's like 250 miles across. And when people, when I'm a former chairman of the Republican Party of Bay County, and people would call me and say, "Oh, I want to run for the House," I was like, "Can you take a year off to travel the district?" Basically, because it's so big. It's like. It's 3 or 4 hours to get from one city to another, and I feel your pain for having to go on something like that. But you're absolutely right on the grassroots stuff. It's the people that get out and knock on the doors and do the personal contact that the voters remember, and that's really what you need. It's not necessarily money. You do need some money, but it's not money doesn't always win. As we've seen, Jeb Bush when he was running against Trump spent $120 million. And he came in third place in Florida, where he was governor. Yeah. So, your name recognition and all that doesn't always count. Now, Michael McCall he's a heavyweight up in the House, and he won. I would consider a 63%, win. That's a blowout. What exactly? And I know that brings being on the what is it, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, that brings tons of money because of Ukraine and all the weapons and all this garbage. Yep. But how much of this is just inbred, what I call Dempublican or Remocrats, where you can't really identify a party. How do you? Yeah. Is that something in your district that people see?
Oh yes. So the reason that nobody else has challenged him is partly what you just brought up is that he's a deeply entrenched, very powerful elite in the House and in D.C. itself. He's got a lot of donors, institutional donors. Most politicians in D.C. probably are, they are too scared to break ranks with him, right? So down here at the, in the district, I've met 3 other people who had their packet ready to go. They were going to submit the ballot application, and they decided to endorse me because I was the first mover, because they didn't want to split the vote 4 different ways trying to challenge this guy, right? But the people around here can definitely see through it. And there's definitely a very strong animosity. And as people are very suspicious of long-term politicians to begin with, right? But especially in the context of the issues that we're facing today. We don't have enough money for the border. but we send billions and billions of dollars overseas to Ukraine. Congressman McCall is in favor of, he's prioritized sending money to Ukraine over the border over the last, session, and he didn't really start jumping all over the border until the primary kicked off, right? And now he's saying all the right things on TV. But what I ask people is, what results have you gotten for the last 20 years? At the end of the day, in the business world, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how hard you try. Like, if you don't get results, you're not going to have a job. Same thing in the military. If you don't get results, you're not going to have a job anymore. And that's what I argue, is that we haven't gotten the results that we need from our Republicans in the House, over the ones that have been there for decades, right? That the fact that the border could get unraveled in one administration, sure, like, we need to talk about the Biden administration, but before we even start talking about that, the Republicans, we haven't been able to undo Obamacare, right? And Obama has been out of office for a long time now. Why was the border it was never fixed all the way. It's definitely not a new issue. It's been around for decades. Why was it so easy to undo the progress that we made under the Trump administration? And I think that Republicans, instead of sending trillions and trillions of dollars overseas in the Middle East to fight those wars for so long, that we should have been focusing on the border a long time ago. And I'm trying to hold, both from a fiscal accountability perspective and a national security perspective, trying to hold our long-term Republican congressmen accountable for the lack of results that we're seeing. It's time for change. It's time for new ideas. It's time for a new way of approaching this.
So Jared, one of the on your page, jared2024.com, you talk about foreign policy and that China is our biggest threat, and we need to focus on China, not Russia. And that ties in with the border, because I recently, I've heard this several times now, that we've had 25,000 Chinese illegals come through, and they're of military age, as well, come through the border.
And those are just the ones
that we know of, right?
That we tag. Yeah.
So tell me, I like this, focusing and not sending money everywhere. Why you think China's our number one threat? And I'm right there with you when it comes to China.
So the Chinese economy has slowed down in recent years, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's not growing as fast as it was, but the Chinese economy is, it's going to catch us at some point, right? And the military is growing at a very rapid pace. The world today has multiple superpowers. The United States, in the last 70 years of our foreign policy, has largely been, crafted from the fact that we've been the sole superpower for a long time, right? Now we live in a multipolar world. India is a major superpower in the world. China's the second, they're the second place to us, right? And so the poles of power in the world are totally different than they were even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We don't have enough money to fight every single conflict in the name of democracy, to counter communism, to counter autocracy, right? Those are very lofty, unachievable objectives that we haven't gotten a lot of results on ever since Korea, Vietnam, Iraq a couple of times, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya. Like, we haven't really gotten results in any of those wars in the name of democracy, in the name of nation building, in the name of security, right? So my argument is, let's stop focusing so much on trying to spread democracy and block, for example, the Russians from expanding wherever they want to, right? And also, because by sending money to Ukraine, we're not only sending it to one of the most historically corrupt countries in the world, right?
True.
But we're also driving Russia farther into China's camp. And in this multipolar world, we don't want, pushing Russia farther to closer to China than it already is tipping the balance in favor of China when it comes down to like weighing and scaling, the military and economic assets that both sides have, if that's how we're thinking about it. If China is truly our biggest competitor, we need to start playing a little bit more creatively and stop using the same playbook we've been using for the last 70 years, because they figured it out and they're using it against us.
Very true.
It's an interesting economic argument. We spend all this money. We ought to spend all this money to Ukraine to aid them and help them not lose the war, right? And I use that word deliberately, help them not lose the war as opposed to win it. There's a difference.
Right.
And
Right.
and then we turn around and the Biden people, and I'm sure this is a hot topic in your area, particularly down in Houston, with the LNG terminals, putting all of that stuff on hold, where we can conduct basically economic warfare on Russia, by exporting LNG and cutting off their gas exports. But what do? We stop, we shoot ourselves in the foot, for the idiot environmentalists, for whatever credit they get. But then we force Germany and all the other countries in Europe to buy the gas from Russia, which funds their war effort, so that we can spend money and they can spend money fighting Russia. I mean, it's insane. It really is insane.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And at the end of the day, I just think we have too many pressing issues here at home to be overly concerned about what's going on in Ukraine. The fact that the Russians, I'm not really worried about, because the fact that the Russians, they had kind of a surprise advantage, and they jumped into Ukraine. They tried to be very aggressive, and that was before we were sending money over there, and they failed pretty dramatically. So everybody, the argument of, well, we can't let history repeat itself. Look what happened with Hitler back in World War II. I don't buy it. Like, if circumstances change that dramatically over the next couple of decades, then obviously, there's a conversation to be had. But even then, the only reason the United States got into World War II was because of Pearl Harbor. You know what I mean? And the economic strains that were in the Pacific. So that would be my counter argument to people who are just like, we have to have this over here. At the end of the day, it's just fueling the defense industrial complex and, lining the pockets of, our elected officials who get PAC money and lobbyist money from large defense corporations in order to keep the business flowing. You know what I mean? So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the cause in Ukraine.
So, Jared, you are so impressive on your website, and I'm really blown away by this because on your stance on abortion, John and I are huge pro-lifers, Catholics, and you write on your page that you're 100% against abortion. It's wrong, only in the case of if life-saving, I guess, for the mother, and you are against it even in the case of rape or incest, because life is life, and I feel that way too. And you're like the first candidate, I think, that's fully there even for rape and incest, because a baby deserves a chance. They don't decide how they land, on the planet. So talk about that stance. Yeah. Obviously you're, I saw that you're a Mormon, and, God is part of the equation for you. So tie all that in for us.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my faith is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We don't really use the nickname Mormon anymore because people often forget that we're actually Christians. And so,
okay. Sorry, the Catholic over here. I think you're a Christian.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's funny because I always have people ask me, so are you a Christian or not? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
See, I have that from my Protestant friends. They've told me, I think you're the first Catholic that's going to go to heaven. And I'm like, what? I thought you were going with me too. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that, like I said on the website, life is life. And people are born handicapped all the time, and the question that I pose, strong voices to the counter is, well, when elderly people get old and they need a lot of help, do we just euthanize them because they're inconvenient? No. Like that's totally wrong. And the same thing goes for babies. Like, a life is a life, a baby is a baby. In the case of incest, like, it's unfortunate that happened. Rape, it's unfortunate that happened, and your heart goes out to the mother. But one wrong does not right another wrong.
Very
justice
true.
Can be served in other ways. And so I'm pretty disappointed with the fact that, like, so many people have such a wide moral spectrum that they kind of bounce around inside of. Like, we have to give women the right to. I'm all about women's rights, and women should be in total and complete control of their health, right? But at the same time, what's wrong is wrong. Murder is, and I don't even like using the word abortion, because truly what it is just baby killing. And
so
we create fancy words that dilute the meaning of what's actually happening. and it desensitizes us to what it actually is, So that's what it is. It's baby murder, baby killing, and
I agree.
It's reprehensible. So that's where I fall on it.
And I'm glad you use that word desensitized, because that's exactly what they use the words for, is to make it so that, as what is it, Obama was one that said it's a piece of tissue, as opposed to a human being.
Yeah.
Well, love that you're supporting that. And, John and I, we live over here in Gates country, and a lot of people don't like Congressman Gates, but we are very pro Congressman Gates because we feel like he's a fighter fighting for America. He's been on my show several times, and he truly kicks ass. And that's who we want in Congress. And Biden has been such a disaster. So tell us how you will bring in that Army Ranger kick-ass mentality to take on D.C., because it's a mess, and these people are so wishy-washy. I don't even feel like Israel, because that's on your website too, supporting Israel, that Biden, he has no backbone at all. And so talk about how you'll fight for Americans in DC, and especially if we don't win the White House in November. I don't even know how we're going to survive this, Jared.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we need people in Congress who are willing to stand alone if need be and say no, even though it might be unpopular, right? So a lot of the federal government is much too large. It does too many things. It spends money on too many things. People ask me all the time, well, what are you going to be able to get done as a freshman congressman? You're not going to have any influence. You're not going to have any chairmanships or anything. Like, well, why should we get rid of this guy who has influence now and pick you? And my response to that is, well, the guy who's already there has been institutionalized and is okay with the status quo, and the status quo has got us to where we are today. So something needs to change. My promise to the people is I'm only going to serve 4 terms. Doesn't matter how much they like me, because I want to lead by example and show that somebody can get elected grassroots style, against all the odds, go represent them in D.C. and do the right thing, and then come home with their honor intact of their own free will and accord, right? And, there's various arguments for and against term limits and such. I think if campaign finance laws were different, we wouldn't need term limits. But at the end of the day, I look up to Matt Gaetz as well, and he and I probably won't agree on everything, right? But at the end of the day, he's got the courage to stand alone and force the House to, change. You know what I mean? And if we had more people in the Freedom Caucus who had that mentality, who weren't concerned with maintaining the status quo, and whose incentives were aligned with the people, not the lobbyists and the PACs and the DC elites, right? Truly aligned with the people, we would be able to do so much more. And what that might be initially is just blocking stuff, blocking spending bills, blocking continuing resolutions, blocking spending going overseas. At first it might just be a lot of no votes. But over time, we'll be able to start building some leverage so that we can actually start passing some laws to fix some of the things that need to be fixed, So I think that's what it is. People who are going to vote on principle, not on transaction. And, that's going to take courage, and it's going to be unpopular. The media is going to, ding us for it. But at the end of the day, that's the only way that we can change things. And I absolutely have the courage to do it. And the reason I'm promising the people to leave after 4 terms is my incentives are now aligned with theirs, not with anyone else, in order to secure my own longevity, not with institutional money, not with elites. It's truly what the people need, what the people want. And I'm going to come back and visit them as often as I can so that I don't lose touch with them.
Jared, that's one thing I admire is that you see the problem as for what it is, and a lot of the answers that make sense. Do you think? Are you a Trumper? are you supportive of President Trump and what? He's the Republicans sold him out when he got elected. It was like with the healthcare bill. He says, "Send me anything and I'll sign it." And they wouldn't sign it. They wouldn't. They took all these show votes, and then when it was on the line, they all bailed out.
Yeah. No, I support Trump in his bid. I supported Trump before it was popular to support Trump post Iowa. So yes, I think I came up publicly back in the end of October is when I said, yep, I heard all the candidates out, but I threw my name behind President Trump because I think he needs another term. And I like what he represents. What he represents is somebody who's not bound to the system, and he's stirred the pot. He's shaken it up, and unfortunately, there's a lot of Republican congressmen who, tout Trump's name and his brand in order to, win their own primary elections, right? But at the end of the day, there's a lot of two-faced people in D.C. who don't truly represent what Trump represents. Now, that being said, I support him, and I'm going to make sure that we can get his policies, implemented, that we can help him win the election and stuff. But at the end of the day, as a congressman, as an elected member of the U.S. House, I'm going to take my role in the legislative branch very seriously. And so that part of that is keeping Trump accountable as well in the executive branch, So I support Trump, but Trump is not God to me, if that makes sense. And I think for some people, Trump can be God, and that's not how I approach it. But I absolutely support him, and as much as I can.
Well, Jared, this has been great having you on. It's jared2024.com. You're on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. I want that Army Ranger to take DC by storm, please, because we need another fighter, and we'll have you back. So, we wish you the best, and God bless you in this fight, because it is a fight, and we're warriors with you in the trenches.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Yep. And if you know anybody in Texas, please spread the word. Word of mouth does amazing things.
We know Alan West. We'll tell him to.
Yeah, Alan West. He was on last week, and he'll be here doing a veteran event this week here in the Panhandle. But such a pleasure, and good luck, and we'll have you back, Jared, to talk all of this again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.
We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we're here with our next guest who can talk money with us, and that is Russ Koesterich. He is BlackRock's portfolio manager of the BlackRock Global Allocation Fund, and we are so thrilled to have you back on the show, Russ.
Well, thanks, Veronica. It's great to be back, and good to be back with your listeners.
Well, and, money impacts all of us every day. So, we definitely wanted to talk about the job market, and I know you're an expert in jobs. So tell us where we're at, because I know that they just released, I guess we're doing well when it comes to hiring people.
We are. It's been a remarkably resilient economy, and no more than any area than in the labor market, in the jobs market. We're still creating a really solid number of jobs. Wages are growing at a reasonable pace, at least relative to inflation. And this has surprised a lot of people. I remember a year ago, there were a lot of calls that there was going to be a recession, that the economy was going to turn lower, and it hasn't happened. And part of what's happened is that a lot of people that left the job market back in 20 and 21, particularly nurses and teachers, they've been slowly coming back into the job market, and that's helped quite a bit.
And how, the other word we keep hearing all of the time is inflation. And John and I talk about this all the time because we go to the grocery store, and the other day I was in our lovely Publix, and a silly pot roast was $29.
Whoa!
For a silly pot roast. So how does this impact Americans now that are trying to have a job, and then inflation's out of control, and our jobs, are they really paying more money these days too?
Well, this is a great question. This is why, despite the fact that the job market is relatively strong, confidence is not as good as it could be, and it's precisely for the reason you laid out. Prices are higher. Now, this is kind of a glass is half full, glass is half empty story. The good news is prices or inflation, they're rising at a slower rate than they were, call it 2 years ago. So the rate in which that pot roast is going up is slower than it was in 2021. But, as you point out, that pot roast is still a lot more than it was back in 2019. And I think this is where people are understandably frustrated, that the price for a lot of things, whether you're talking about food, rent, the cost of going to a ball game, that's all a good deal higher than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And, that does impact the way people view their economic situation.
Russ, one of the things I'm curious about is how much this is being driven by government spending. I mean, I look at the economic forecast, listen to Jerome Powell, talking about these deficits, running multi-trillion-dollar deficits for as long as that I can see, and we're pumping so much money into the economy. Is my economic training or whatever schooling has always been, if you pump a lot of money into the economy, you're going to get inflation. And they tried doing that for a long time, and all of a sudden, here comes this inflation train just speeding through. Is that really what's going on here?
It's definitely a part of it. It definitely is. It's really hard to kind of disentangle, the role of government spending versus, how much money the Fed put into the system back in 20 and 21 versus the fact that, 3 or 4 years ago we had all these problems with supply chains, and there were, cargo ships that couldn't dock in Long Beach. But I think you're right. There's definitely a component of this which comes from a lot of money being spent by the government. And just to put numbers behind it, we're running deficits. Again, the government, the difference between what the government takes in taxes and what they spend, that are equal to 6 or 7% of gross domestic product, everything that's produced in the country. And we've never seen that level of deficit spending outside of either a recession, which we're not in today, or a war, a major war. So this is unprecedented. And while you can't give the exact number, I think it's fair to say that the amount of government spending and the persistence of government spending has contributed to this environment of higher prices.
So do you think to me it seems like the prices are now baked into the economic formulas, and do you think that there's going to ever be a potential for disinflation, or that the Fed would allow a disinflation period in order to get prices back down?
So I think we are going to see some disinflation. As a matter of fact, we're already seeing it, but it's very specific to certain categories. So I'll give you an example. Certain prices, if you look at around the holidays, were coming down. The price of toys, for example, was coming down. Parts of apparel, clothing were coming down. So there are areas where there's a lot of inventory, where merchants are like, look, I've got more exercise equipment than I need. I've got more pairs of jeans than I need, and we can discount those. Where you're not seeing that, and this is where I think the Fed is, the central bank is a little bit nervous, is in a lot of services. Anyone who's got on an airplane recently or stayed at a hotel or gone to a restaurant knows that prices have not come down. They're still a good deal higher. So that's where we're not seeing disinflation. So part of the challenge right now is you've got parts of the economy, particularly goods that we buy, where prices are falling. But then you've got a lot of what we buy in services and experiences where they're still rising at a decent clip.
So on the real estate market side, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal about all this office space that's being vacant office space that's being carried on a lot of as still performing loans, and that there's a good potential for another equivalent of a housing crisis that we saw in 2008. Do you see that on the horizon?
We do think there are problems in the commercial real estate market. And again, this would be office buildings in particular. We're more constructive on the housing market, which, as you know, was what really, kind of crushed the economy back in 2007, 2008. And the reason is we've got a shortage of houses, particularly in many parts of the country where you can't build as easily as perhaps you should be able to. So we're less worried about the housing market, but we do think that commercial real estate, particularly office space, is a problem. For a bunch of reasons, one of which is a lot of those properties, a lot of those projects, they might have made sense when you could borrow for almost nothing as you could in 2019 and 20. Rates go up, and suddenly, a project that was profitable when you could borrow at 4% is a lot less profitable when you're borrowing at 8%. But the other problem is, as you all well know, is that there's been a lot of migration, and there are parts of the country where people have just not returned back to the office, whether that's New York, or San Francisco. And in those markets, you do have a lot of office space that's lying empty and may not be viable going forward. So I don't think it's going to be as bad as 2007 and 2008, but there are smaller and regional banks that are tied to those markets. We've seen one, for example, New York Community Bank Corp, that are under stress because of this problem with commercial real estate.
So, people talk, Russ, about recession. Do we need to be worried about that going forward? Because that word always pops up in every business story inflation, recession, and economy. Those are like the three words.
I think that's totally fair. Veronica, I think the good news is we're probably not looking at a recession this year. Because,
Great.
Again, the job market is strong. Consumers, again, I know people are not feeling great, but they're certainly in decent shape. People have less debt than they used to in general. Doesn't apply to every household. Inflation is slowly coming down. There will be another recession, no doubt about it. But it's funny, a year ago, that was the word of choice. You looked at Google searches and the searches on recession was skyrocketing. I think there's less concern about that today. It's one reason the stock market is doing a lot better. It's one reason that confidence, while it's not great, is up from where it was 6 months ago, that people are feeling, we're probably going to be able to avoid it, at least in the near term.
Great. Well, I love hearing that. And what about our housing market? Because the interest rate to buy is that's more insanity, especially for young people trying to make it today.
Well, that's the tough thing. If you've got a home and you have a mortgage that you got 4 years ago and you refinanced it at 3%, you probably want to stick in that. You want to stick in your house because it's hard to get that same financing on a new home. So what we're seeing is that, people are they're not selling. There's not a lot of turnover in the housing market. And you're exactly right. If you're a young person and you're starting out and you're looking at a mortgage of 6.5% or 7%, that's a much harder payment to make each month than back in 2019 when that same mortgage might have been 3.5%. So what we're seeing in the housing market is just not a lot of turnover. But I think there's a solution to that. And what you're seeing is people moving to parts of the country where housing is cheaper, where you can add supply, where you can build. And I think that continues. And some of these migration patterns that have really been, so powerful over the last 4 years, I think you're going to continue to see that happening. And, obviously your state, Florida, has been, one of the biggest beneficiaries of that.
Very, very true.
I'm just curious, Russ, on the economic models, are they being adapted? We have like at least 8 million people that have come into the country in the last 3 years, and I don't want to make this a political discussion, but that I'm looking at the economic impact because you have 8 million people come in. You obviously has demand for housing, healthcare services, jobs, everything else. Are the economic models designed to have that kind of number come into it and make reasonable predictions?
Probably not. I think is the short answer. Economic models are, they're useful, but they're models. It's trying to represent this huge economy, which is made up of 330 million people and billions of transactions with a couple formulas. And, that might be helpful to get you in the ballpark, but there's always going to be things you leave out. And, one thing I learned early in my career, economics is not physics or engineering. You have an engineering model, you kind of trust it, that bridge, if you build it right, is going to stay up. Economic models, there's a lot of guesswork, there's a lot of assumptions. So, no, I think the reality is they do tend to leave out a lot of things, no matter how good it may be or, how brilliant the person who invented it might be.
Well, my daughter's a Wall Streeter, so all week I was talking to her, and I was like, I need you to send me a question or two. So she asked me to ask you here, based on Friday's PPI print from Larry Summers, he said that the Fed might need to hike again. What do you think that does with the Fed's timeline?
I think it pushes back on what a lot of investors thought 3 or 4 months ago. So just to take a step back, if we go back to around Christmas time, the market had convinced itself, and you can see this in various financial instruments, that the Federal Reserve was going to do their first rate cut in March when they had one of their scheduled meetings. and they were going to keep cutting maybe 7 times over the course of the year. And the funny thing is the Fed said, we're really not going to do that in their speeches and various officials, but the market didn't believe them. And what you've seen over the last 3 weeks is the market is starting to take the Fed at their word, which means they probably will not begin cutting rates until late spring or more likely early summer. And when they cut, they're more likely to cut 3 times rather than 6 or 7. So the importance of that is, short-term rates, short-term interest rates, which are set by the Fed, are probably going to be higher at the end of the year than most investors would have thought 2 or 3 months ago.
And I had a question as well, because, we've got Ukraine and we're giving money to them. And, how does that impact when America gives away so much money? And how does that impact the world that you're living in? Is that something that you're thinking about when we have wars overseas that we're either involved in or supporting?
Well, it is something you definitely think about. And certainly, we've got 2 wars going on right now in the world that are affecting everything from the price of oil to whether or not you can get a container ship through the Red Sea. So you've got to be aware of all of this. But I think it's very hard. And, one thing you asked before about, how good are economic models? They're as good as they can be, but they're certainly nowhere near perfect. I think it's also really hard, given all the uncertainties in the world, for someone to know what's going to happen ahead of time in the Ukraine, in the Middle East. So when you're building a portfolio, you're investing for clients, you've got to ask yourself, well, what could go wrong? And if something does go wrong, how can I help protect our clients from some of the bad outcomes? But there is a lot of uncertainty right now. And just like it's hard to build a model to capture immigration, I think it's really hard to build an economic model to try to predict what's going to happen in the Ukraine.
Okay. And I had another question, because this week there was a senatorial candidate in California that wanted to, she said she wants the minimum wage to be $50 an hour. And that just seems insane to me, especially for the small business owner when it comes to jobs. They're not going to be able to afford this. Is that crazy when people, want to hike the minimum wage and, to $50 an hour? Because we've had $15 and, so.
Yeah, 50 is aggressive. I don't think it's a bold comment.
Sign me up. New Starbucks barista.
Today, it's hard to go from 15 to 50. That's a big increase. And look, no one knows what the right number is, but it does have an impact, and you always have to ask, how is this going to affect the demand for labor? And there's always a question. You raise the price of anything. And in general, and it's common sense, you don't need to take an economics course, the demand goes down. So you raise the price too much of hiring an entry-level worker, you have to ask the question, well, are people going to want as many of them, or can they afford as many of them if you really aggressively raise the price, bringing someone into your labor force?
Well, I wanted to add, go ahead, John.
I was just saying, in general, Russ, do you think the stock market is overpriced, and same thing for equities? Or do you think the pricing is where it should be, and where are we going?
Not for every stock, but in general, I do. And it's John, this is a great question. And if you look at sort of the basic valuation metrics that people tend to watch for the stock market, it's not cheap, and it's hard to make an argument that it is. But I'd say a couple things. The first of which is you've got a few companies. These days they're called the Magnificent Seven. They used to be called the FANGs. But the gist is you've got a few really big tech companies that just have a phenomenal business model, and they just generate billions of dollars of cash. So yes, they're pricey, and some of them may be overvalued, but generally they're such good businesses you can make an argument that you want to pay up to get a part of that. And the funny thing is the rest of the market, when you look at a lot of segments from autos to airlines to energy stocks, they're actually quite cheap. And the reason is, last year while the market was up 25%, which was a great rally, particularly after 22, a lot of parts of the market were left out. So we're still finding bargains in the stock market. We still think that for long-term investors, you don't want to abandon it. You might have some bumps along the way this year, but we still believe, particularly with decent growth, with inflation still too high but coming down, that stocks can end the year higher than they are today.
Great. And then here's another question from one of my experts. It's, CPI came in hotter than expected. Where do you think this leads the Fed at starting the cutting cycle?
You know, as we were talking about a moment ago, I think it leaves the Fed taking their time because the Fed is looking at the economy and saying, well, you know what? Generally when the Fed cuts, they're going to cut because they're worried about the economy. And right now, there's not a lot of reason to worry about the economy. And the Fed could also say, well, you know what? We think the economy is okay, but inflation's coming down, and we don't have to keep interest rates as high as they are. And that's what we expect to happen later in the year. But as your listener correctly points out, inflation's not coming down as fast as maybe they'd hoped and a lot of investors would hope. So what it tells the Fed is, you know what? We did a lot of work to get rates where we think they need to be back in 21 and 22 and 23. We're going to wait now. We're going to hold off. So I think it leaves the Fed waiting and probably not doing much until we get into the summer.
Excellent. And Russ, what do you actually do for BlackRock? Because I saw you oversee $50 billion in global assets, I guess. So tell us what you do, because that's amazing. That's so much money that you're overseeing.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. You know, it is a big responsibility, which we hopefully can deliver for our clients. But my role is I'm a portfolio manager, and along with a couple of my partners, we manage what's known as the Global Allocation franchise. And what that is, these are a number of different funds in model portfolios that basically are designed to give people, their whole portfolio. So we invest in stocks, in bonds, we can invest in commodities, and we've got a lot of flexibility to think about, for someone who might be saving for the next 30 years, what portfolio, what can we own in the market that's going to give them a good rate of return over that period? And hopefully, doesn't always work out that way. 22 was a tough year, but hopefully give them a bit of a smoother ride, dampen down some of the volatility that people sometimes experience in financial markets.
So Russ, you have a global perspective. Do you see any other economies tracking or bettering? I mean, are we looking at something like the Asian countries? A couple of decades ago, that was the big thing. The decade of the Asians was growing, and that's where you should be investing. Is there any equivalent to that we're looking at now, like South Korea, Japan, again, Australia, New Zealand, any of those?
There are a couple of opportunities, but I'd say, first and foremost, we do believe the U.S. is the best market to invest in right now. And if you look at our portfolio, U.S. equities are our biggest holding. We have more of them than our benchmark, which we're measured against. So we're definitely long the U.S. What I would say is, we've pulled back quite a bit on China. I don't think that opportunity is nearly as interesting or as safe as people might have thought 10 years ago. But the direct answer to your question of where there are some other opportunities outside the U.S., I would cite Japan. Now, with Japan, it's a funny market, and it's a market that's disappointed investors for a long time. And as many people will know, the Japanese stock market peaked up 35 years ago in 1989. So it's been treading water for a very long time. But having said that, it's been doing much better lately, and the economy is normalizing a bit. They have less deflation, which they were fighting for years. Their corporations are getting a little bit more friendly to shareholders. So the other market we found interesting right now is Japan.
I love Japan. Well, that's excellent. And, you're dealing with these big clients, but somebody just starting out, do you have any advice for, somebody just joining the military or just out of college? How do you get ahead these days when your rent prices are so high just for your little apartment?
Yeah, no, it's a hard thing. And again, you definitely have to, you got to realize that for a lot of people, just trying to pay their expenses, there's not necessarily a lot left over. Mm-hmm. I'd say start small. You know what? Even if it's, $20, $30 a month that you can put away towards, whatever investment you're comfortable with, hopefully a broad one that includes some stocks, just get in the habit of putting that $20, $30, $40, $50 away. And over time that will build. And, the one thing that young people have going for them is time. And, it's pretty miraculous. You think about, getting a 7 to 10% return over 40 years. You can start small, but if you keep at it and you keep that money invested, by the time you're looking at retirement, that's a pretty significant nest egg. So just invest what you can, do it for the long term, and stay in the markets.
Excellent. And what are we missing, Russ? Because I feel better now talking to you. I guess I can afford the $29 pot roast.
I'm still reeling over that number. That was a lot for a pot roast.
I'm telling you.
Well, I think the good news is I don't know if the price of that pot roast is going to come down, but I do think there are other things we're buying that will start coming down, and that's probably good news for a lot of people who maybe feel a little bit better each month with their budget.
Excellent. And then when it comes to elections, 2024 November, do elections matter to you? Are you looking at it as closely as we look at it?
They're going to matter at some point. Generally, the election year, there's not a really strong pattern in how markets do. So the third year of an election cycle, which of course was last year, tends to be a strong year, and that played out. I think if you look at what investors have typically done, they don't start to focus on it until the conventions later in the summer. So I do think there's going to come a point, maybe about 6 months from now, where the market's going to start to focus on it. I'd say right now most investors are more concerned about what the Fed's doing in the next labor market report than what's going to happen in Washington. But that will change as we start to get into the summer.
Well, outstanding. I'm always nervous when you come on because this is big stuff we're talking about, but you make it sound wonderful. And it's been such a pleasure having you back on, Russ. And he's from BlackRock's Global Allocation Fund. You're one of their portfolio managers, and we got to have you back because, the money is so important to everything we do.
Oh, Veronica, thanks for having me, and love to come back anytime.
All right. Well, we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with Linda Cope. She is one of the founders of the Warrior Beach Retreat, and we've got a big event coming up this week on Thursday, February 22nd, to include a parade and a ceremony. Welcome back, Linda.
Well, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be on your show, Veronica. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Linda. And, I'm very excited because we've got Alan West is flying in to be with the 8 combat wounded veterans and their spouses. And you have been working so hard for this Warrior Beach Retreat. So for anyone that doesn't know what it is, please share what the Warrior Beach Retreat is.
Well, my husband and I started this almost 15 years ago after our son lost both legs above the knee and wounded his hands by an IED blast in Baghdad, Iraq. And we realized when a soldier goes to war, a family goes to war, and the caregivers really take the brunt of this. It's very tough on them because their lives are not the same. So we decided to begin hosting retreats twice a year, two ones for a week long, for them to come from all across the country to reconnect as a couple and just get hope to carry on.
Well, that's fabulous. And I know you've been working so hard for our event this week. And so tell us about the parade and what people can do. That's Thursday at 4 p.m. So where can people catch the parade to include an F-35 flyby? So I hope I don't crash the car because I'm actually going to have Alan West in the vehicle with us. Hopefully it's sunny and the top's down. But when 2 F-35s fly over, I just hope I don't crash, Linda. This is pressure.
Actually, our last retreat, we all stopped on the top of the bridge and got out and saluted. So I don't know if we're going to do that again.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. That might help with the crashing.
That might help with the crashing, And I asked them, fly lower. The time before they were up so high, I said, fly lower. And they graciously did for our last one.
Oh, so fantastic. Okay. Well, excellent.
But I've got to give credit to my wonderful husband of almost 47 years, Philip Cope. As you know, Veronica has been doing so much behind the scenes.
Oh, my gosh. Everything. He sent me the script. I've helped y'all edit and then the program. And you guys have worked so hard. Before you would come on my show, but now that I've been involved with this, setting up Alan West and then I've done an itinerary because every minute he's here, we want to make sure he's wined and dined and treated with the utmost respect because he's coming here for free, and he normally is a guest speaker that people pay big bucks for. But you guys have worked so hard from all the radio ads, Linda. You know, you're on all the billboards, and the venue is at the First Baptist Church on Grace Avenue, right by WMBB studio, and it's huge. And I really, really hope people come to see Alan West at 7 p.m. because normally you pay to hear him, and he's just the most gifted speaker and just so honorable to come.
Well, and he's coming and staying 2 days. So we can go do PT with the guys, you said, on Thursday morning.
Yes.
and we're excited about it. We thank you, Veronica, for making this happen, to have the contacts to get him in. But the parade route leaves at 4 p.m. from
Pier Park,
Pier
right?
Park.
Okay.
It's at Pier Park, yeah. But warriorbeachretreat.org gives all the times and locations for the parade. So you'll know exactly when to get out there and honor these men and women as they go by. And like you said, you know, Colonel Alan West is going to be in the parade, and I am looking forward to him seeing the patriotism of Bay County.
Well, I'm so excited. And, you know, he was on last weekend with us, and he's just, you know, he understands. He was in the military for 22 years, and he understands what people that, you know, have a combat injury or PTSD, what they've given. So I'm looking forward to his patriotic speech. I know it's going to be amazing. And we want to invite everybody out because it's free at 7 p.m. You can see and hear him, and it's worth it. I've heard him speak now multiple times. So Linda, I'm just so proud of what you all do, and I'm so looking forward to this week.
So I got a quick question.
Yes,
I got a quick question. Have you invited the Navy dive school guys to the PT with Colonel West? Those guys are all using PT, and that would really be a blast.
Yes, we need to do that. I'll have to get Commander Mosey out with his folks. So
they can do. That'd be great. But also, anybody that has a motorcycle that wants to ride in the parade, be there at what time? So 3 o'clock? 3:30 at the location on our website. It's Pier Park near Penny. But we just really are excited about this patriotic community, how they show out by the thousands on the parade route. So get out there. It impacts these men and women more than you can imagine, because so many of them went from the battlefield to the hospital to home and never got a hero's welcome. And then also in the front of the parade, we have 4 Vietnam vets riding that, you know how they got treated.
Yeah. So this is our chance to make it up to them, Linda.
Yes, it is. It is. You got it, girl. So we are looking forward to it. And they come in from the 20th to 26th from all across the country. And we appreciate everybody's prayers and support for all those coming in. And we need donations, because they used to donate the rooms, but since the pandemic, they don't. So it's quite expensive to put on events that we've been doing faithfully since the pandemic, because we also do 2 smaller retreats, maybe 3 this year, for the couples to strengthen their marriages. And it's not the same couples that come back every time. It's new couples for every retreat. And the mini retreats, they go on 4 couples to strengthen their marriages that have been on a major retreat. But besides that, the major retreats, we have a waiting list till 2027.
Wow, that's so impressive. Well, this Thursday, you know, we want them to come out for the parade, line the Hathaway Bridge, 4 p.m. And then we've got Alan West, 7 p.m. at the First Baptist Church there on Grace Avenue. And he is just an amazing, amazing patriotic speaker. So, Linda, I can't wait. We're going to have so much fun this week together.
We are. We thank you so much, Veronica. You just are a rock star. Pleasure working with you, and tirelessly, you and Philip constantly sending emails back and forth.
Well, yeah, I joked with him. We got to start our own company, because your husband, like he's like a whippersnapper. He doesn't stop, you know. So, anyways, but warriorbeachretreat.org. Check out the details. And Linda, I can't wait to be with you all week, and we'll be honoring veterans that have actually they've paid a high price, and we can't wait to dote on them all week.
It'll be special. Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show, and I appreciate this time. God bless you all. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and now it's statesman John Salick, and we've got so much to talk about, John. I mean, can you believe that they finally impeached Mayorkas this week? But, what does impeachment really mean? Our border's still being invaded every day.
That's exactly right. We're still being invaded, and what's interesting on that, the storyline's changing, because it was all these people from, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Guatemala. I think they've run out of people. First off, they've emptied their prisons out.
Great.
Which I was reading, Venezuela, they emptied their prisons out and sent them, all the prisoners, up through Mexico to come across the border. So we've got all these thugs, prisoners, whatever, from these countries. And they're saying, we're not taking them back either, if you try to deport them. So this is the kind of people we've got, in addition to the
criminals,
the criminals. And actually, you think about it, just think about it. It makes absolute sense. Why spend money on prisons and keeping these people in jail when you can just kick them out of the country and send them to the U.S. and it's our problem, So when they commit crimes, we can put them in jail and spend all our money on them. So it's nuts. And then now it's the Chinese. Most of the migrants coming across now are Chinese nationals. I mean, I'm astonished.
And why? Because we've got sleeper cells all around. And so I've been joking because I've just been so excited with my new Premium Plus X account. Veronica, I don't even know what it's called here. As I sent my driver's license away. Let's see, what is Veronica Live, at Veronica Talk. And so in order to get traction, you have to pay. And I have to comment on all of these things. And then last night, there's things that have been happening around the country. And so this house in DC exploded, and it was in a fancy neighborhood, and this happened 2 months ago. And so people are tying all this in. There's no details on any of these weird things that are happening around the country, So I definitely think we have sleeper cells, and we know that our government suppresses news and information because they control it all. So Twitter's the only place you can go, and it's freedom, John, freedom.
They had the Twitter files that got released, and it showed the extent that the government was out there policing and cajoling these tech companies into suppressing information and actually putting out flat out propaganda that was not true. And that was one of the big stories this week, was by Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, who was the Twitter files guy that Elon Musk gave all this stuff to, and says, here, go publish all this stuff. Here's all the information that the government did. Go publish it. And Alex Gutentag. And the story is the CIA had foreign allies spy on the Trump team in 2016.
Disgusting.
The Russian collusion hoax. And I've been following the story all week. I am shocked at what was going on. That Brennan, who was head of the CIA, with Obama's knowledge and the cooperation of the FBI, the Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit, and a bunch of other government agencies, actually out doing foreign operations, what they call a push-pull operation, to try and get these people in Trump's orbit, like Paul Manafort and a bunch of others, that trying to use foreign intelligence agencies to raise a red flag about him so that they could go and prosecute him or pursue him under FISA. I mean, it was an invented op by Obama's team. And nobody's outraged about this. Nobody wants to know about it. I mean, this is stunning reporting.
So we had Big Intel, that author on the other day, and Michael Waller, that was kind of a counterintelligence, work for the CIA and FBI. Right. So I share the interviews after all over the place because I want everybody engaged. And so I shared it on LinkedIn, and this retired FBI agent kind of went after me. He's bogus conspiracy theories he wrote about my post and the show. And I was like, well, have you read the book? And then he came back with an endorsement from Tucker Carlson, because on the book, Tucker endorsed Big Intel. And then he wrote, additionally, Waller is known for his unconventional views, shorthand for conspiracy theories. I'm sure his book will do well. I can't even say this word. Oh my gosh, misinformation, disinformation is doing quite well lately. I wouldn't waste a dime or the time of it. And then I wrote, well, maybe you should read the book. I enjoyed it, and he's on our side. And then the guy was like, which side is that? Is that Tucker Carlson, aka Putin's useful idiot, on our side too? And I was like, well, I better not engage the FBI retired agent anymore. And I was gentle, but he was like so angry about it.
Well, it's obviously he's a leftist and probably basement guy,
Yeah.
but all of this stuff, you can't make this stuff up. It sounds like a conspiracy, or like some kind of hoax or something, until you start reading about it, and then all the pieces start falling in, and it's like one of the things that came out in this story from Schellenberger and Taibbi was there is a binder that has all of this information in it.
Right.
It's highly classified, right? That was the binder that Trump got on national TV and said he was declassifying all that information. And apparently there was a scramble. This isn't a fake fact. This is real. They were trying on the last day of the Trump administration to get that declassified book out the door and published. And I don't think they succeeded. And the whole purpose, what they're thinking of, the purpose of the raid on Mar-a-Lago, because they thought Trump had a copy of it.
Right.
They want this thing back because
they want it desperately.
The entire government intelligence system. It literally blows it up and makes it that it's a Democrat operation. And it, as we were talking to Peter today, and Jared, this is what this country's come down to. We have got this Democrat Party that wants to destroy this country as we know it, as it was founded. They don't want a republic. They want them to be, we're destroying our democracy. It's like, we're destroying the Democrat Party, and that's what needs to be destroyed. We live in a republic, first off, not a democracy. And these clowns listening, every time you listen to these scoundrels, Fani Willis. I don't know.
I did. The woman's a wackadoodle.
Right. She's talking about destroying democracy. We're destroying democracy. I'm not the one on trial. And it's like, hey, lady, you're the one sitting in the witness chair being cross-examined.
So how did that actually happen? Because I've been trying to read all these stories, and I was like, I can't even believe she was on the witness stand.
She wasn't.
It's just chaos. And then she starts blabbing, and then I sent you one of the tweeters or what are they called? Tweets. They're not tweets anymore. One of the things on the X's was that her dress was on backwards yesterday, which was hysterical. And then the supporters started they started posting the dress that it does have a zipper in the front, but it was hysterical. And literally she just would not shut up. And then she was talking about how, as a black woman, you've got to have, money. She's always had $500,000 to $15,000 cash in her house. Then her dad got on the stand and talked about,
who's a former Black Panther, by the way. He is a former Black Panther. I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, I didn't know that. It was absolutely ridiculous. And then this morning when I was show prepping, I get up early to look at things last minute, and CNN actually, it's really become I want to push an American agenda. I'm Hispanic. I don't want to push a Hispanic agenda, a pride agenda, a black agenda. And so this morning, because the new thing with this Fani woman is that we're all racist, and that she's not getting the chance to talk because she's a woman and she's black, and they're not treating her fairly. And what about that she's a liar? John.
That's the thing.
And she had her little lover toy boy that she funneled $600,000 to, and they went to
almost $1 million.
Oh, is it almost $1 million? Okay, well,
almost
I
$1 million
missed
in
that.
total billings. Yes,
but
and to sit here and watch her on the stand, well, I'm not going to sit here and let you emasculate a black man. I think he did a pretty good job of emasculating himself when he was on the witness stand. He didn't need her help.
He was sweating profusely because here's the thing. This woman, we talked about too how they can't go anywhere because everybody has to stop and talk to her like she's a hero. Where's my airsick bag? And here are these people. Once again, she's been given this opportunity, and of course, it's all fake. It's all theater because it's all about the headline. But her head explodes. She ruins someone's marriage. She's funneling him money that she's helping to spend because they went to Belize, and he's like, "I put it on my credit card, but she paid me back because it was my birthday present." So she's paying her sugar daddy.
The interesting part will see if there's any pursuit of what she said on the stand, which was shocking stuff. Like the campaign. She took cash from her campaign account.
She did say
I'm like,
that.
Are you joking me? Did I just hear the Fulton County DA say that she took cash out of her campaign account to spend on her personal expenses? That's jail time, folks.
Well, but that's why this morning CNN's rolling out that we don't like her because she's because black women. The woman even said it. We talk too loud. We're boisterous and nobody wants to listen to us. And we're women and we're black and so nobody respects us. I'm like, bull. We don't respect liars. That woman.
Right.
Fani always has nice dresses and jewelry. She always looks great. So
I was stunned that the judge sat there and put up with that.
But maybe he's trying to let her can herself because they're saying that she's going to be canned and they're both probably going to be disbarred. But she'll write a book. She's going to write her book how we don't like her because she's black, and that's not true. We don't like her because she's dumb.
She's a liar and is
abused
pursuing
the system.
Trump. Her pursuit of Trump was her campaign. She's like the woman Letitia James up in New York.
Well,
she ran on getting Trump. I'm going to get Trump. That's what she ran on. And that's not the way the justice system in this country is supposed to work. So we'll start with that little piece. But and then the fact that the governor, Brian Kemp, has not stepped in, or the state attorney general or anybody else, where are the grown-ups? to put a stop to this. I'm serious, Veronica. Where are the grown-ups? What does it take to get this crap stopped? This is a political persecution, and everybody sees it. And I'm just wondering, is a Republican governor of Georgia afraid? Ron DeSantis would not put up with this crap. He would have canned that. He would have canned a Fani Willis. He would have fired her.
Well, somebody wrote, I've been having so much fun on X. I really should have become a Premium Plus member before, John. But somebody was like, what would you title what's gone down with Fani? And so I wrote, the title of this new movie is The Gray Goose Money Tale Trump Escapade. Because it's been such stupidity how she's talked about, well, he likes wine, but I like Gray Goose, and it was all about tail for them. So it's just been hysterical. And then my other funny tweet was, I can't wait to see them in their matching black and white striped outfits. How romantic is this going to be? #prison romance. But they probably aren't going to end up in prison. They'll just end up debarred writing their books,
Well, Veronica, the thing that shocked me was the blatant racism that was on display by them, by Fani Willis, by her dad. Even her dad got up there and he actually said it without prompting. It's like, I know this is going to sound racist, but we have to carry a lot of cash because when we go someplace, they won't take our American Express because we're black. And I'm like,
it's so stupid.
Insane?
Everybody takes my American Express, even though there's a few stores that don't take it, which is very annoying. But, and then I wrote this one too. This is so funny. I wrote, she deserves this. All of this fake Trump prosecuting went to her head. I wonder if her toy boy is going to support her when she's fired, because she's going to be fired. She's going to be fired.
No, he's not going to support her because he has no job when he's done, and he has no skills.
and he was doing traffic tickets as a lawyer before, so obviously he's not gifted at all. Right. And she was so cocky on the stand, just letting her mouth just ramble with stupid stuff. From what you said, taking campaign money to her Grey Goose, drinking the cash. Like somebody's probably breaking into her house when she's not there on Monday to find this $15,000. I mean, these people are stupid.
Well, that's the thing. If they think that she's always carrying, $2,000 or $3,000 worth of cash, I think she's a good target for a mugging.
Yeah,
and that's the part that I laughed at. It's like if that was true, you'd see black muggings off the scale because supposedly black people are carrying all this cash around with them because they can't get their credit cards are being declined left and right.
Right.
It's so racist. It is so racist to do that, and that's all they do is they play the race card when they have nothing else.
All the time. And that was what, Dr. Gay, because I'm black. So no, I am not a racist. I grew up in the military as a brat. Melting pot, was in the military for 20 years. So half of my life, the 41 first years, was all within a melting pot. So take your race and stick it. I'm over it. I'm over it, John.
The fact that somebody has a lack of merit because they're stupid
and they're liars,
not racist. Okay,
that's
not racism.
And this morning CNN, I mean, I literally wanted to throw up. It was so bad. And then so I posted on the Letitia James, the AG, because she came out, about again saying that this wasn't art of the deal, this was art of the steal for Trump, and that his ego's so big. No, your damn ego's so big. And I wrote on her Twitter something to the effect that, okay, well, this is your dream, all of this press coverage because she wants to be the next governor of New York. And I'm like, this is a dream, honey, because we're not voting for her. In New York. New York needs to wake up. Everybody needs to wake up. And just like Peter said, this election in 2024 is so important. And to think about that race too on Tuesday, the George Santos seat. Why didn't it go back to an honest Republican? Because they chose the wrong candidate. The RNC didn't stand up. Now a Dem is going to be there. And, it's a razor. The margin now is so small.
Now we're down to like 2 or 3 seats. And, we'll start with the really stupid part, and that was the Republicans decided to kick him out. He had already said he wasn't going to run for re-election, so why kick him out now? Can't you wait 8 months and just let it play out and keep your control for 8 months? You've got a reliable vote. He's going to vote however the leadership tells him to vote. But no, we do stupid. That's the problem with Republicans. We do too much stupid, and we just I don't get it. And I'll go back to one of the big stories this week. And as soon as I heard it, red flags went up with me. And I mean, I don't know about you or Malcolm.
Which one?
the one on the White House urges calm over Russian space weapon
more
threat.
Kabuki theater. Yes.
I'm like, okay,
because I'm like, well, what is it? Because first they didn't say what it was. They just said we have to declassify something, John.
Right, some urgent threat,
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're about putting nuclear missiles in space. And I'm like, that's not the story. There's something else going on here. For this thing to appear out of nowhere, and everybody is pushing the storyline. And that's like, there's something.
It's trying to scare us again.
Right.
And so my brain was like, oh my gosh, what could it be? What could it be? The Chinese, they're going to blow something up. And then I'm like, do we have our plan?
Well, the first thing that popped in my mind was when they're talking about, weapons in space. And I'm like, why would you put a nuclear missile in space? Because ballistic missiles go through space. OK, you don't need to put nuclear missiles up there other than to reduce the launch time, launch to the detect phase. OK, so that's a minor piece there. But it's like and I was like, OK, they're talking about anti-satellite technology. And I'm like, I was reading about I subscribed to Aviation Week and Space Technology, and I've had that subscription since the 1970s, okay? A long time, okay? They reported decades ago about anti-satellite technology that the U.S. was pioneering, okay? So we had the first aircraft-launched anti-satellite missiles, so we perfected the technology a long time ago. And then the Russians, guess what? They have anti-satellite technology too. And what was it? A year ago, 2 years ago, year and a half, they blew up a satellite in space as a test. and everybody knew about it, and we were telling them not to do it. We warned them. Joe Bush.
Joe Biden. Freudian slip there.
Yeah. Anyway, don't do it. Don't do it.
But what Americans don't think of is that your cell phone wouldn't work. You wouldn't have GPS. Your banking would be messed up. I mean, there's definitely things we need to worry about, but I don't think they're doing it, though. I think there's another story there, like you were saying. Right. What is the story? We've known about this for
decades. We've known about this threat for decades, and it's real. I absolutely believe it's real. And if we have a really big war, I think you're going to see a lot of stuff in space getting blown up by both sides, because you think we're not going to take out all the Soviet GLONASS navigation satellites and all their comm satellites. I guarantee you we're going to be blowing them up. So there's no doubt the next war is going to be a lot of stuff happening in space. I'm talking about a big war. I'm talking about a World War III level type event, including the Chinese. There's going to be a lot of stuff in space being blown up by all sides. So it's not going to just be a terrestrial war on the ground. We're going to be blowing up navigation and communication stuff left and right. And that's just the way it is. That's just the reality of the military situation. So that story, like I said, when I heard it, I was like, there's something going on. No,
there's something there. It's sort of like the balloons crossing the United States.
Well, what's going on in Congress? Funding for Ukraine. And what do we have to do? We have to make Russia a threat so that we can say we need to get the money to Ukraine so the Ukrainians can stop the Russians, And that's just a bunch of crap. We're still...
I mean, what's sad is that yesterday, Alexei Navalny, who was an opponent to Putin, has been in jail, and he ends up dead. And his wife's in Munich at some event with the whole world, and so I mean, I figured he probably would end up dead because that's what the Russians do, but. We're headed in that direction, because yesterday with that court case in New York, and the millions and millions of dollars, like his sons $4 million each, they have to pay. The former CEO $1 million. This is out of control.
It is.
I don't know if people don't wake up. John, why do you and I have complete clarity on this, and the world doesn't see it? They don't see it. Because it's a headline, and they're not digging into the story. And, oh, my gosh, Trump, he's going to have to pay $400 million. He's obviously stolen money. But when you read the story, he didn't.
Well, we start with a moral foundation, a well-grounded moral foundation. And when you can look through the world through a moral lens, and you understand what objective truth is, subjective truth is what the left uses. It's all moral relativism to them. It's not to us. We believe in evil and good. Back to our moral lens.
Killing babies.
Right.
Let's just start there.
We have a filter that helps us find the truth. We're looking for the truth. Isn't that our objective? For our life,
and we don't go around lying to everybody like these people do just to be on TV. So
that's the brilliance of the founding fathers. They built human nature into our Constitution. They understood the nature of man and said, how do we stop man from his natural tendencies to want to dominate and rule over other men? And that is an absolute truth that's been thousands of years in the making, okay? That truth didn't happen yesterday. It's been thousands of years in the making. It's even in the Bible, man wants a king. Where do you think King David came from? Because they wanted a king. And it's just back to the nature of man argument. But, what one of the things that was in the stack of stuff, the afterburner, was that New Yorker essay. And it's very long.
It was so long.
Very long, right? And
I didn't have a book to prepare, but I had a John read this essay.
Right. The title was, Can the Ukraine Still Win? And first off, being in the New Yorker was shocking to me.
I know, because that's such a liberal propaganda,
right. And it's a well-written piece. And it's like, it's very extensive. What was it,
10 pages?
It was
15 pages?
long. John was trying to give me my 500 book. I think what I was most excited about is I like the paragraph about the F-16, giving them the fighter jets. Is that going to help them? But
right. But it still comes down to we want to send them all this money, but we don't want to send them what they need to win. That's the difference. The title, can Ukraine still win? It's not a matter of can they still win. We don't want them to win. We want them to keep
when do the good guys, us, not want good guys to win? But I think there's more there. Just with the Bidens and the money laundering, and there's more there. There's so much more there that's hidden. And the average person that doesn't read the news is absolutely clueless that the Bidens have been money laundering, and you
don't think Zelensky
selling access
knows every bit of where the bodies are buried in Ukraine as far as all of this political corruption and stuff goes, with not just Republican or Democrats, but the Republicans also. Both sides are guilty of using Ukraine and Ukraine aid as a piggy bank for campaign contributions being funneled back to them and their family members. I absolutely believe Joe Biden is just, and Hunter Biden and the family business is just the tip of the iceberg for corruption by U.S. politicians on both sides for money laundering, and that's just the way it is. So why do we not want them to win? Why we're not afraid of Russia? This escalation stuff is a bunch of garbage.
But did you feel in that Tucker interview? I mean, I think Putin wants to be done with it too, and why has nobody really gone to talk to Putin? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have to send Tucker, and then he's the evil one. And I mean, Russia's lost tons of people in this conflict too, and I think they want to be done. I mean, they want to keep their little land, but they want to be done.
No, I don't think they want to be done at all, because Putin views himself as a historic figure, and he wants his model of Russia is the historic Russia. Whether you want to have all the debate about the different wars and what peace came and went and all this time, whatever Russia is, land wise, and that's why he wants Ukraine, and that's why he wants the Baltic states, because that's all part of Russia, Lithuania and all that. That's all part of Russia in his mind, and so you have to understand his perspective and what he's after. What the truth was, Veronica, was when this thing started, it showed what a paper tiger the Russian military was. Seriously, I mean the fact that they had this stalled line, 30 or 40 kilometers long of vehicles that were stalled because their tires were rotten, because the military hadn't bothered to keep up the vehicles.
And they don't have a chain of command that a general has to be on the front line. And how many GOs got killed? So many. It is a disaster, their military.
But early on, they did not have the military capability. The Russians didn't to withstand a Ukrainian offense. If we had armed them big time early and given them all the stuff that we're giving them now early on,
it would be done.
It would have been done. And Russia would have been back to Russia, and that would have been the end of it, and they probably would have taken Crimea back, the whole 9 yards would have worked out. But we would not do it. We would not give them what they needed, and we still won't give them what they need to win. We give them what they need to sustain a stalemate, basically. It's like
and maybe Americans don't care because it's not our people really in harm's way anymore, like in Afghanistan. So they're like, whatever. But I'm tired of writing checks to everybody, and then our budgets, our deficits out of control, and then all these illegals. I can't take it anymore, especially when you hear they're prisoners and crazy people and nobody's vetting, and then Americans end up dead.
When the argument comes down to the fact that the $95 billion in aid, that most of it is going to U.S. government contractors to produce munitions, it's a jobs program now, okay? That's the justification. It's a U.S. jobs program. And I'm like,
you people are really freaking crazy. There's something, this needs to stop. Okay. It's not weapons to kill people and break things are not jobs programs. Okay. They're an essential piece of defending the country. And that's the job of the military. And I'm just really getting tired of listening to all this stuff. There's no end game. There's no off ramp. There's no exit to this strategy by these people.
I'm just tired of giving away all of our money and now funding illegals.
We don't have money. We just print more, you know. Which
there was a funny story. Let me find it here. Because in Harlem they have this building. It's like a fancy building, and one of the residents noticed their bunk beds, John, were going into the building. What does that mean? This building that's so fancy and they're putting bunk beds in there. And so the Harlem residents got wind that guess who was going to be moving into this luxury building? Guess who? Illegals.
Illegal
and so it has a black woman talking. So the New York mayor backs down, John, on plans to install migrants into this luxury condo after keen-eyed neighbors spotted bunk beds being delivered. So the 35 apartments in Harlem, they have an indoor swimming pool, marble bathrooms, and a rooftop running track. But the apartments, they've been empty for more than a decade because banks foreclosed on the development. But the black residents were like, hell no, you're not putting the illegals in our neighborhood.
Well, I'm shocked. I just laugh at this fact that you have it's a fight over welfare, over who gets to spoil
the building's breathtaking, by the way. I don't know why it's not already full of residents when they have a housing crisis.
Probably
supposedly.
Rent control. I bet you dime to dollar it's a rent control building. And there's a lot of abandoned buildings in New York where, because of the rent controls rules, they can't even fix the apartments because the cost would be so high.
Well,
they would never get the money back.
The story says that New York's going to spend $12 billion over the next 3 years handling the influx of these immigrants in New York City. $12 billion. Is that not insanity?
Yep. And they're cutting, the Adams came out and said every agency in New York City had to take a 5% budget cut across the board. Everybody cutting their budget 5% to pay for this stuff.
And they've got 170,000 illegals that have arrived since the spring of 2022. I mean, this is just sheer insanity, you know?
Yeah, well, the gang violence is increasing. That these people have no job skills. They're vagrants basically. And New York's paying for it. So until we get Trump in there and he closes the border.
Oh my gosh!
Speaking of borders, one of the funny stories was Egypt is building a border wall. Did you read that?
Yeah, because people don't want to be invaded. And then this week,
really?
Well, Thursday.
Invading them? Imagine that.
No, and I've got to get this author on. His name's Lauren. I can't think of his last name, but he writes these children books that are like Dr. Seuss, but the guy's called Dr. Truth, and it's all about politics. So I bought every single one of them. I was invited this week to speak about the Republican Liberty Caucus, and I'm trying to grow a chapter here in our county. But he was the guest speaker, and so I'm working to get. We've already been in communication about coming on the show. But he's literally, he talked about Sweden and how they invited all these migrants in and their rapes have gone off the chart because, the women are very beautiful in Sweden, John, if you didn't know that. They're all tall, blonde, and blue-eyed.
Yeah.
And you have all these migrants that are all Muslim and, they're suppressed with sex. And next thing you know, they're raping these women. And so 95% of the rapes in Sweden are these migrants that they brought in that have been raping the women. And so I was talking. And
it's okay because they're infidels, they're so it doesn't matter. They're infidels.
Oh my gosh. Well, and then, so my friend sent me a story because now Sweden has had enough that they'll pay these migrants to leave. They'll send you anywhere you want to go. So they'll buy your ticket so you'll leave Sweden because it's so out of control. And so I can't wait to have this author on because he had all the facts because England's the same way. And oh my goodness, this is a story I found last night and another one. You know, we have these stories that I require airsick bags to read. And this was one. JP Morgan hires retired General Mark Milley as a senior advisor. So General Milley that tried to warn China if Trump was going to be a problem is now going to be in. JP Morgan's one of the top, banking companies, JP, Goldman
Jamie
Sachs,
Dimon.
and Citi. Now they've hired this lovely guy, and I'm trying to find the quote. Oh, there are no shortages of geopolitical challenges and opportunities, and I look forward to helping the firm and their clients navigate them, Milley said. Yeah. Really? Can you believe it? I can't even imagine because these CEOs of these companies, they make like $30-40 million. How much do they pay in this general that was a nightmare?
Probably millions of dollars. Their board members make a lot of money. At least 100,000. Most board seats, even the cheap ones, are 100,000 a year for a director position. And the ones that are in big corporations get a bunch more than that. Plus, they get stock in the company and all that. This is all political, okay? They're hiring him because he's a political guy. That's what they're hiring for. He has no skill in finance or anything else. And the geopolitical stuff, they could probably find from far better people qualified than him. I mean, he's a military guy. He knows nothing about geopolitical squat. I just don't. It's like any defense contractor. Why do they hire the admirals and the generals and stuff? Because it's a business case.
Yeah.
So they're hiring for what they bring. Because they'll get their phone calls answered. When they call their replacements. I mean, the whole thing is so corrupt. But
it's corruption everywhere, and now it's in the finance industry with the woke general who was a loser.
Right, I think that's part of the problem. Is back to moral principles. It's moral relativism. It's like, well, everybody's doing it, so why shouldn't I get mine? Look at the migrant thing we were just talking about. Okay, you got these people in New York. The migrants are getting. They're going to put them up in a $500 a night hotel and the fancy condos and all that. And then the minorities, from the hood that are on welfare, where's mine? Where's mine? Where's mine? That's their reaction. Okay, it's not that this isn't right. It's where's mine, and that's the whole problem with our society. In the political class, it's now become where's mine as opposed to what's the right thing to do. What's the Constitution say we should or shouldn't do? That look at the judges. Every one of them. One of the one of the funnies this week was these two idiots that splashed some red powder on the Constitution, right?
Yes, that story.
and you sit there and you see these two guards, these two DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion guards that were hired, just standing there doing
because nobody can engage
anyone. Nothing. And I'm looking at them like, wait a minute, they've got guns. Okay, these people have just assaulted the Constitution. You have no idea what that powder is. Okay, these are two idiots here. It could have been.
Well, the quote is, they throw the red powder on themselves and the encased Constitution in the archives, Rotunda, D.C., and the police are there, and they scream. One of them screams out, "We all deserve clean air, water, food, and a livable climate, John." So you're going to ruin our Constitution that tries to give you that, dumbasses?
Well, it's as somebody pointed out, one of the best lines I heard was, the first thing that everybody.
I've actually been to that place that they did this in.
Right, but when you joined the military, you raised your hand, and what did you say? What were those words? To protect and defend the Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States of America.
And I guarantee you, those officers that were standing there did the same thing, and they sat there and watched.
Well, and then they send out the statement. The Dr. Colleen Shogan, the archivist of the United States, this place said the National Archives Rotunda is a sanctuary for our nation's founding documents. They are here for all Americans to throw red powder on to view and understand the principles of our nation. And we take vandalism very seriously, and we will insist that the perpetrators be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Really, like the January 6 people that you open the door for that are in prison for 18 years? They're going to get a slap on the hand.
Yeah,
where I don't even know. Were they white people? I don't even know. They probably were.
They were two white dumbasses.
And they probably hadn't taken a shower and had green hair and their noses pierced. We know who you are.
Right. It looked like they came out of the mom's basement kind of guys, you know. It was just so stupid, but it's just back to the nature of what's going on. You know, everybody thinks it's a free-for-all.
The other story in the afterburner stack was the Clarence Thomas story, Justice Clarence Thomas. You know, that he's an enemy to the black people. When I think of people who deserve, I even wrote this down, who deserve sainthood, it's going to be Saint Donald Trump of Mar-a-Lago, and then Justice Clarence Thomas of Washington, D.C., because these two men, Clarence Thomas has been kicked in the gut. I think I was in college when I don't even know what year, I got to Google that, when he, the Anita Hill crap. This man is just like Trump. He has been kicked in the gut over and over. I don't even know how these people do it. I know he's a man of faith and Catholic too. I just don't know how these people do it, John, because I'd be like, I'm out of here. I'm moving to Scottsdale. I'm always working on my husband to move to Scottsdale.
Well, he's, to me, Justice Thomas has always been somebody that should be held up as an exemplar of what achievement, not just black achievement. I wanted to say black achievement. Anybody's achievement to come from it's the American story. You can start from nothing, absolutely nothing, and on merit.
Well, like Ben Carson came from poverty.
Right. He's one of the smartest people. Ben Carson, right, absolutely. One of the best pediatric surgeons in the world, right? Merit. And that's how they got where they're at.
So
they didn't get there because somebody gave it to them.
He was put in there in 1991. So we've been hearing Clarence Thomas story. Yeah, it's like when I graduated from college in 1990. He's been kicked in the gut for how many years? Since 1990. I mean, forever kicked in the gut.
And you look at every black person of accomplishment, Thomas Sowell, good example. Same thing. They said Ben Carson. All these people that have made something of themselves through their own native intelligence and skills, which is the best way to do it, because nobody can take it away from you. Okay, they can't take it away, and they know that, and that's how they've succeeded, and that's what we should be passing on to every black kid out there. Every minority kid out there, it doesn't matter. It's not a black thing. Every kid out there, you can get as far as you want to go. When I was growing up, it was always that anybody could be the president of the United States if you put your mind to it. And that's probably still true.
Well, this story correlates with all the race crap with this Fani whatever. And so it says the author of the hit piece, Amisha Cross, who's proclaiming that she just simply can't celebrate Thomas during Black History Month, John, and so she trashes him over politics. And her quote, it's a long quote, but she talked about his betrayal. And before becoming a justice with the U.S. Equal Opportunity Employment Opportunity Commission, that he wanted to shut all that workplace discrimination down. And though she continues here, Thomas also had a tumultuous confirmation hearing amid allegations of the darling Anita Hill that he'd sexually harassed. And she wrote, this is Fani. We could put Fanny's name in there. Hill's testimony should have ended his career then and there, but a black woman with credible claims of abuse in 91 wasn't believable anymore than the majority of black women who were systematically erased from the #MeToo movement today because they're not believed. Give me a freaking break. It's always about race with these people.
Yeah, it's the Me Too movement. It's like, well, if a woman said it, it's true. And it's like we know for a fact it's not true, and it's as bad as all this stuff with rape and stuff is, there are women that make it up. Okay, they make it up. It's not true, and it's been proven. The Duke lacrosse players. Perfect example, right?
Oh my gosh, they were trashed.
How many lives were ruined? Lives were ruined because they believed the woman? And that's the problem.
Well, and then I don't know. Did you write this comment? It says, evidently Black History Month is only for Black liberals, not Black conservatives. So therefore, Thomas is excluded by the left. So I was like, John must have wrote that comment. I mean,
it's absolutely true. It's
Clarence Thomas.
True,
I would love to meet him, and he's continually just like Trump. They try to hit him and kick him, and it's not good enough that he's worked hard. He's been a Supreme Court justice since 1991, and he's a conservative. So blacks can't be conservatives, Yeah.
Well, the thing that Trump has brought to the table is he fights back.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
That's something they've never had. It's always been you play the race card, and the Republican white guy or whatever goes crawling away, because you called him a racist, and they don't know how to stand up for themselves. And Trump this is a valuable lesson. Trump has taught the Republicans, the ones that will learn the lesson, is to push back on this crap. Don't take it. When they sit there and call you a racist, smile at them and say, you're an idiot. And that's what we need to start doing is calling these people out instead of giving them any kind of respect, or even worse, trying to get down on their level of garbage and have a debate with them on their level of garbage. Just call them stupid. What do you think these interviews would be on television if the guest came in there, particularly the Republican guest came in there and started talking to, I don't know, say what's his name, Joe
Rogan?
Morning Joe guy. No.
Joe and his, yes.
Yeah.
Morning Joe.
Yeah, or Rachel Mad Cow, and actually started saying to them, you're stupid. And see how the interview goes after that.
Yeah. No, they'd shut him down. They'd shut him down. Right. Well, right. I think this was a shocking story that was in the stack of stuff. The reason the Justice Department just sued Tennessee Sun's critics, and it was the DOJ on Thursday, sued the state of Tennessee for enforcing its aggravated prostitution law, arguing the state is illegally imposing harsher criminal penalties. Now get this. Hold on. Put your seatbelt on sex workers who have HIV. Doing so, the DOJ said this violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. What the F over? WTF? They have HIV. You're a sex worker and you're spreading it to people. I mean,
right.
Granted,
it's a public health crisis. I mean, it's not nothing to do with
maybe because
it's public health.
Because there's all these HIV commercials on all the time. Take the medicine once a month, and I'm like, how many people have HIV now? You know what I'm saying? But what? It's a violates the Americans with Disabilities Act because you have HIV from having sex with someone.
So we have to make accommodations.
It?
Yeah, we have to make accommodations, I guess. The reason that it's a criminal penalty is because if you give somebody, a sex worker gives, and I don't care, it's man, woman, whatever, it goes both ways. If you give somebody HIV, it used to be a death sentence. First off,
it used to be
because there was not. You can control it now, but it's still as far as I know, it's still incurable. I mean, it's there.
Right, you have to take the pill.
Right. So, but it's still you're assaulting somebody. You're giving them a disease.
It gets worse. The Assistant Attorney General, Kristen Clark. She said people living with HIV should not be subjected to a different system of justice, John, based on outdated science and misguided assumptions. This lawsuit reflects the Justice Department commitment to ensuring people living with HIV are not targeted because of their disability. This is literally, we are full on banana republic. I'm sorry.
I know.
We're talking sex workers that, it's not legalized in America. And now you have HIV that potentially you could give to some stupid person that's having sex with you. And then I have to worry about all this crap. This is, I can't even take it anymore.
It's Alice in Wonderland, literally. I mean, it's like down is up, up is down.
Down the rabbit hole. And if we don't win November, and honestly, we need to win November, and we need to win like the next 100 years. We're screwed. But I don't know if we can. I booked next week. Retired Congressman Jeff Davis is coming back on, and so we were texting, and then he sent me this long email, and then he sent me another email yesterday about the Liberty Caucus. He's desperate to talk to me, or the Freedom Caucus in D.C. to me, but in his email to me, the first one, he said it's a 50-50 toss-up if we're going to take the White House in November, in his opinion. And he's always with politicians, so he's got the vibe out there. And so, like, I've just been, I didn't want to read that. That was a kick in my gut, because I don't want to deal with the left anymore, John, that want to kill babies and
the fact is you're gonna
worry about HIV sex workers, that you put something in writing. So to me, it's saying it's okay to be a sex worker.
They're not going away. Okay, they have been indoctrinated by our schools, by our colleges. We have all of these empty skulls of mush coming out that have the inability to critically think and question, okay? That's been destroyed. All they understand is the propaganda that they're fed, and that's what they believe the world is, and back to good and evil, we don't teach that stuff. We don't, people aren't going to church because they don't believe in God, right? So no moral compass. If you don't, what is it saying? If you don't believe in something, you'll believe in anything, right?
Yeah.
So if you have nothing to guide you, if you don't have that star out there that says, "Follow me," this is the light and the truth. If you don't have that, how in the world can you make a judgment on what you're being told on anything else?
It was funny because I went into Walmart before my Super Bowl party, which I had last week, which was really fun, even though I'm still recovering from COVID and the exhaustion. It's real. I'm telling you, they told me it was going to be a month. And the woman behind me was wearing a devil pentagram thing that was as big. It was like 3 inches by, like 6 inches. I was like, oh my God. Like, so I saw this and she wasn't young. She was older. And you got to pray for these people. Who wears that? Why would you want to give the devil anything? You know what I'm saying? As we kick off Lent this week,
people believe in it.
It's So I went to Mass on Wednesday on Tyndall Air Force Base, and the priest is from Africa, Father Buhaki, and I love him, and I used to work on Tyndall, and so I ended up reading, because they need a reader, and he points to me, she'll do it, and then I was like, okay. And so his homily was very inspiring because, it's like, just like going to the gym and you're lifting weights, you need to have that spiritual warfare and lift weights, of Jesus and God. And so the Super Bowl had the Mark Wahlberg, who we all love as an action star. And he's a huge Catholic, if you don't know. And he was on Laura Ingraham this week too. Wednesday night with his ashes on his forehead and pushing his Hallow app, which is that Catholic app, and apparently it's been downloaded a bunch, and so I go to download the app and try to do the first Lenten prayer, and then the next day my husband's like, somebody's hacked our card, and I've got a payment for the Hallow Catholic app, and I canceled it, and I was like, what? That was your wife. And if you've ever watched Seinfeld, Putty was dating Elaine, and she didn't know he was religious. She's driving his car and got the gospel music on, and so apparently he was really religious. He's like, well, I'm going to heaven. You're probably going to hell. So yeah, my husband canceled my Hello app. Damn it. So I was trying. So I've got to re-engage my Catholic app. But thanks, honey, trying to get me to heaven. But on that note, the other story that was kind of scandalous here too is the one about the FISA stuff, John. The Speaker Johnson abruptly halts vote on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act after Republican lawmakers threaten immunity. So what do you want to say on that story?
that we saw the abuse of the FISA court by the FBI, and I remember the debate when this went through. The FISA didn't come into existence, I think, until
wasn't it after 9/11? Yeah,
right. It was part of the Patriot Act, and I remember the debate about it, and it was like, what do you mean we have a court where you can get where it's all one-sided? It's the government side only. And then eventually they ended up modifying it to have an ombudsman. I always have trouble saying that word.
All these words.
That's supposed to represent the public interest, and not the government's interest, to kind of counter the government argument. But then you end up with the FBI lying in their applications, and the court does zero to sanction them, not a thing. So it's like, wait a minute. If I was the head of the FISA court, judge, and the FBI came to me and lied to me under perjury penalties, I would have had their butts, and I would have said, from now on, the burden of proof on the government is 10x what it was before, because we know the government lies to us. But back to, they can't do that. They won't do it. And to me, it says the whole FISA thing needs to go away, because it's obvious that the structure is not designed to protect the citizens of the United States, which should be the bottom line. No. It's not to protect the government.
Well,
it's not to promote the government.
Especially if you're listening and tracking journalists trying to tell the story and stuff. It's just been disgusting.
Right. All the domestic spying is against the law, yet they're doing it. They were spying on Trump in Trump Tower. They were wiretapping his phones. And I'm like, what? This guy's the president-elect of the United States, and they're wiretapping his phones? What in the hell is going on with our government? And for Trump to not come, they eventually, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was the director of the National Security, who was a Navy admiral, went to Trump Tower and told him they were being spied on. They were being wiretapped.
Can you believe that an American running for office?
I couldn't believe. Right. First off, I couldn't believe how in the world did any court authorize a wiretap on the
Watergate, right?
Of the United States.
Yeah,
that was so far beyond imagination of possibilities. It wasn't even funny. We're not talking to some Joe Schmo citizen here who's colluding with some Iranian idiot, to do something. We're talking about the president-elect of the United States, and they're spying on him and his people, and it's just, that tells me this thing is broke and it needs to be eliminated. It has no functional use to me.
Yeah. I don't want to spy on, a sitting president, somebody running for president that isn't a communist. He's not, you know what I'm saying? It was a Republican. Right. Well, and then I don't know if you saw, darling Biden went and visited East Palestine a year after the toxic train derailment, John, because he's trying to show that he cares. And yesterday on one of the shows, they had a couple that had to abandon their entire house, and the wife was crying. She's like, all of our memories are in the house. They can't take their pictures. They had to leave it all because it's so toxic. And now he's trying to be so tough. And so he said out there, his quote was, while they're acts of God, this was an act of greed that was 100% preventable. Let me say it again, an act of greed that was 100% preventable. And so now he's trying to lay it at the feet of, the company that was transporting all of this stuff. But a little too late, I think. And why are you even showing up now? And I guess people were protesting him. I mean, he's just such a loser for a pick.
Right. It was, that's all it was optics. And to sit there and say, well, it was greed that did this. It wasn't greed. It was an accident. And, you can debate about how many, wheel bearing overheating detectors you can have or not have, and I've seen some of the new technology that's actually been installed there for it. They have a new thing called a train scanner that the trains go through, and they put the first one of them is in East Palestine. Okay. That's where they put it. But this thing, the train goes through it, and it takes high-speed pictures of the train in motion going through all these detectors, and it's looking for safety problems of all kinds now. It's a first. Yes, it was an accident, but that accident drove investing in a new kind of technology that's going to make safety even better. So it's like, okay, you wouldn't have had this fancy train scanner that can detect as the train's moving through at high speed all these problems. That would not exist if it hadn't been for this accident. So to sit here and say, well, it's greed. No, they've paid more money out in claims and cleanup.
Yeah. Well, Norfolk Southern
saved.
has invested more than $100 million in recovery, including millions to direct payments. And then the final quote in the story from dumb Biden that's a year too late. It doesn't matter if you're a Dem or a Republican or an independent. What matters is we're all Americans. Everyone. We look out for one another. We leave no one behind, and we come back stronger than before. That's what you're doing here. These people are, and then he's gone. You know what I'm saying? A year
leave no
late.
One behind. Well, what about Afghanistan? Aren't there still American citizens stuck in Afghanistan that can't get out?
Well, and then the people that served
behind,
as translators, I'm sure their lives are hell. I wanted to talk about your little cartoon. The second one was it says House Intel Chairman Mike Turner, the Republican for Ohio, and there's a fire alarm and it says national security threat, and he's trying, I don't know, is he trying to pull it because it's going off, and he writes no reason for alarm, and trying to get out of the U.S. Capitol, exit only.
That's
back to that space Russian threat.
That other idiot, that Democrat that pulled the fire alarm to stop the vote, right?
Yeah. But he didn't do anything. He got a misdemeanor, I think, for pulling the alarm.
Yeah, exactly. So back to national security. I think this is it's a distraction, is what it is, from what the real story is, which is the Ukraine aid and the Israeli aid that they're not wanting to give them either.
No, and then everybody hates. The first. Oh, yeah.
I thought you would have got the first one. You would have liked the first one a lot better,
Yeah, Biden unfit to lead, and then it's President Harris ? And on one of the papers, the husband's reading, and then the wife's reading Russia space nukes wars on her paper, and then she says, "Do we have to give up something specific for Lent, or can we just give up?" And that was my joke to my husband. I told him for my Lent kickoff that I was giving up stupid people for 40 days, and it is not possible. What is this, day 4?
No, there's too many of them.
John, I can't give up stupid people. They're literally everywhere, and then they try to hit you in a car.
40 days, that's all it is.
Oh, poor Jesus. At least there weren't as many around when he was, out there. But yeah, it's been another crazy week. We lost the seat in New York, which I'm so sad about. And then, George Santos, you've got to go follow him on X because he actually says some really fun stuff. And, he's like, oh, you gave me up for that. So, and why did we do that?
Exactly. That's, Russia. It's not beyond the norm for the Republicans to shoot themselves not only in the foot but the ass, I think.
Well, I miss Rush a lot, and probably because I've never gone to a therapist because I just was a Rush baby, and that's who I listened to. That was my therapist, I guess. And I can't even imagine, because every week it gets worse and worse. And then, of course, they were showing snippets of Biden this week, and like he froze when he was speaking somewhere. I don't even know if it was Palestine. Somewhere he was speaking this week. Like he's so checked out, and every week they crank him like he's a toy, and they crank, and then he goes out there and then he can't even function. And I'm like, how are we going to deal with this anymore? I just don't know. I don't know.
I watched a segment with a medical doctor that specializes in dementia and Alzheimer's, and he was talking about the condition, just from seeing him, not having personally diagnosed him, but actually just seeing his memory lapses and his actions and stuff. And he says he's actually pretty far advanced, and he's at the stage where it accelerates. It's not it's going to be 10 times worse in 10 days. It's something that's sort of like an exponential progression. It gets really bad really fast. the question is he even going to make it to the convention? And that's an interesting story. My position has been it's going to be a brokered convention. They're going to be deals done, and whether now Biden has a place to play in this because he has all the delegates or enough of the delegates to win, so he has to release his delegates. Otherwise, they have to vote for him on the first round, and then he wins by default. So he has to go in there and explicitly release all of his delegates for them to vote for somebody else. So a political deal is going to be done. Biden's not going to be the candidate because he will be too far gone to even give an acceptance speech. And I think that's just where we're headed, And
he didn't do the Super Bowl with the largest Super Bowl ever watched. Right. And oh, by the way, they only showed Taylor Swift 54 seconds. But
what a gold standard we have.
And I have to say, I didn't like the halftime show. I was like, but at least the food at my party was delicious.
I don't understand with all this modern techtechnology. Why can't they have some decent audio? I mean, it's like you couldn't hardly hear any. It's like they had somebody sitting up in the stands with the microphone, and you were just getting this echoey thing off the speakers. Now,
I will say the Thunderbirds was excellent, and my husband showed me somebody sent him. I follow the Thunderbirds on Instagram, but I hadn't looked like what they did. The ground crew to make sure they hit show center, over the new stadium. So I do vector everybody to go check out the Thunderbirds on Instagram because it was kind of interesting. It was like 12 pilots to get them over, I'm like, really? Like they've never done this before? They live right there. The home of the Thunderbirds, because I used to work with them all the time.
The stadium is pretty damn big and you're not that
It's
high.
a $5 billion stadium. I think you're going to find it. But I guess they shot up stuff so they knew where the target was. And then they had the woman sing the Black national anthem, which I was anti that because that just annoyed me. And then they just fawned over Reba McEntire, but it really wasn't my favorite one. And then Usher, and then he took his shirt off at one point. I'm like, please put that back on. I don't know. And then I don't
add
know.
Anything.
It added nothing for me. I liked when he was on roller skates because I was a roller skater.
Part was the best part. Yeah, that was a new one. So I was like, yeah, that's entertaining. I like that roller skate thing. But
it's been madness, And then fast forward to they had the parade, where the team is from, and just thousands and thousands of people came out, and of course, two teens and an adult, I guess, started shooting people, and like 20 children ended up getting shot. And one woman, a DJ, died. And so that is just so sad. And again, as soon as this happens, what happens, John? Everybody wants to go after our guns. And so, I responded to one. I'm like, this has nothing to do with guns. I've got a bunch and I know how to use them. So,
right. And the problem is you have crazies in the crowd. And if they would let other people carry guns, instead of the guy having to tackle, one of the fans having to tackle.
Oh, that was incredible. And his wife kicked the gun. They were in tag teaming it. So impressed. And
that's what we need is we need people that will stand. If you're relying on the police in a situation like that to save you, you're dead. Okay.
Well, it's really weird because
you got to be able to shoot back.
So that happened, and for the next 2 days, no names on who these people are, and apparently they're underage. But that was really weird. I mean, they came out first and said no, it wasn't a terrorist, event. But yeah, they've been dragging their feet on all of this, and so I don't know.
Well, it's like the lady in the Lakewood church thing there. It's the AR-15's fault. She had an AR-15 style rifle, so it's.
But she ID'd sometimes as Jeffrey. She obviously had mental issues. Plus, if people are taking these hormones, I don't know. They're probably
the hormones.
It whacks your brain out.
Right, smoking marijuana on top of that and getting psychosis, and I mean all this stuff. There's nothing wrong with recreational marijuana,
John. Yes, but it was the guns, John. It was the guns, the guns, John.
Yeah,
but it was
trigger pulled itself, didn't it?
It was funny because when I spoke at the Republican women, I told them about some of the bills and talking with the legislators when I ran around for the Liberty Lobby days for the Republican Liberty Caucus, and and one of them was when there's a crisis or a hurricane, you can't go buy ammo or guns. And I said, I want to be able to buy as much ammo as I need. And it was a whole room of people. I don't know if it was 100 people in there, but they were all nodding their heads when I talked about that. And then the one bill about, an American flag is the only thing that can be flying, not a pride flag or a transgender flag. Like the whole room, their heads moving up and down. And then about the monuments, taking out civil rights monuments, they're like, no, this is our history. We've got to know our history. So that was very interesting. I was with some people that believed what I did, and they really loved that bill about if you're not an American on your license, it says you're not an American. And I think that is so important, honestly. So,
well, the fact is they're trying to get these. They're gonna do their damnedest to count every one of these illegals in the next census so that they can get, representation, pushed out to these blue states and stuff. And I hope Trump comes in and literally shuts the border down, just stops. Nobody comes across that Mexican
and I think
border,
we need to deport them. I'm like, give them their money, give them money to go.
Send them back.
But
send them to
I
Mexico,
don't know.
Send them somewhere.
I don't know who you are, and I'm worried about some drunk driver hitting me or somebody shooting me, when I'm out shopping, or some sort of criminal activity. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I want everything to be under control.
Well, we should be like Mexico. It's really interesting. Part of the Trump had to remain in Mexico policy, right? So if you tried to enter the country and you could get your name on the list for asylum and all that kind of stuff and get your hearing in 4 years, and then they turn around and says, all right, go back to Mexico. Well, Mexico took those people and deported them because they didn't want them in Mexico.
It's just
so they sent them back, and it's
I'm all about giving people money. Let's send you on your way. Give them $5,000. I don't care. Time to go.
Well, to me, every one of them that transits through Mexico that comes into the United States and has an asylum claim, that first off, not only have they broken the law by illegally entering the country, they've broken the asylum law, which says you have to go to the first adjacent country that will offer you asylum. Well, that for Guatemala and Nicaragua, they're all going through Mexico. Okay, so it's like, well, you're not claiming asylum in Mexico, so you've broken two laws now, and you're not getting asylum in the United States because you should have applied to Mexico first. And the problem is we've got these non-government organizations. And Catholic Charities is in there. There's a whole crap load of them in there. They're all liberal leftist organizations. The Red Cross is part of this. They're all in these countries, stirring these people up and telling them how to come here illegally.
Well, I'm over it, but
we just need to stop it.
We have to stop it because you or I couldn't go. We can't get into Canada without showing a damn ID. You can't get into any country without showing an ID.
Hell,
so
I can't come back into the United States without showing my passport to the Customs and Immigration people. If I don't have a passport, they're not letting me in.
On that note, but we'll get into it all. I do want to tease that Congressman Jeff Davis next week, and I pulled up the email now, and he wrote me, we have no national leaders, i.e. POTUS, VPOTUS, or SecDef. So I can't wait to get into it with him. And then he's very in tune with what's going on in Israel and Ukraine. So we'll talk to him next week. But what an incredible show. We had Peter Feaman, our Florida National Committeeman. He's going to be going to Houston. I think we're finally going to get rid of Ronna McDaniel, which I cannot wait. We'll all be cheering. And we thank Jared Lovelace, who's running for the 10th district and for the Texas Congressional seat. And he's running against a pretty strong incumbent, but he sounded fabulous. And
he's
sounds like he would.
Deal.
Yeah, we need fighters. And then Russ Koesterich, he's from BlackRock's portfolio he's a BlackRock's portfolio manager and from the BlackRock Global Allocation Fund, and talked economy. It always scares me a little bit because but it's great. And he didn't sound.
But you got a good inside source, okay?
I know. Well, and it sounded pretty positive, because you don't talk politics with these people, but they don't think it's the end of the world. So
he seemed optimistic on the economy.
He did. He really did. And then Linda Cope. So if you're around Thursday in the Panhandle here in Bay County, go. 2 p.m. is the parade, or 4 p.m. is the parade over the Hathaway Bridge with two F-35s doing a flyby. And Colonel Alan West will be the speaker at the event, which is at 7 p.m. at First Baptist Church on Grace Avenue, right by WMBB. I encourage you, normally you have to pay to see Alan West, and he is flying in here for free. And he's, a national speaker fighting the fight. And I can't wait. It'll be a patriotic honoring veterans.
And you can do PT with Colonel West if you want. Come on.
I know. I got to tell that to my husband because he's a young spry 63. But anyways, John, wishing you a blessed weekend. It's a 3-day holiday. Thanks for joining me. We always have so much to talk about.
All right. This is going to blow Twitter up now that you've been verified. Got your
I know.
bonfires.
Oh, my gosh. I've had thousands of impressions and already tons of likes. So anyways, we will talk soon. Thanks for joining us on Veronica Live, and we'll have plenty of guests next week. God bless everyone.